Chapter 1065. Isshin Shiba's Zanpakuto was nowhere to be seen. The blade in his hand was completely made up of mysterious black mist. There was no blade, no cut, and no pressure. Everything looked normal at first glance. Other than the fact that he couldn't sense Shinozaki Isshin's Ryatsu, everything else was normal. Only Dustless felt the threat of death.
Bring it on, Isshin Shiba.
Dustless wasn't surprised that Isshin Shiba knew how to use Moonless. After all, he was the one who taught Shinozaki Ichigo how to use Moonless. It was only natural that Moonless would be used as well. This father and son had many similar techniques. Although the state in front of him was similar to Moonless, there was a fundamental difference. They were two different techniques, but they were similar to Shinozaki Ichigo's Moonless. Dustless cleaned the dust on his clothes and said helplessly, "So strong. My clothes are stained with so much dust. Is this guy not afraid of death? He can still remain calm in the face of such a powerful and dangerous technique. And he's even provoking that Shinigami called Isshin Shiba. He was completely different from Dustless. Shinozaki, who was watching in the dark, cursed Isshin Shiba for seeking death. Isshin Shiba didn't make any excessive moves.
However, his face was covered in frost, and the invisible blade in his hand grew larger and larger.
Go to hell and repent. As soon as his voice fell, Isshin raised his black blade and swept out. A huge chop was like a hot knife through butter. The ground was easily torn apart like a piece of paper. The black light that wanted to destroy everything could condense time and space. The world was solemn, and only the crisp sound of cracking could be heard. The earth was completely destroyed by Moonless. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of destruction. I thought it would be a powerful technique. I was looking forward to it. But it's just this. Glancing at the incoming black light, Wu Chen regained his composure. He waved his big hand, and a dazzling brilliance swept out from the void behind him. A strange spiral weapon emerged from it. The moment the strange sword appeared, it emitted a demonic red light that quickly deciphered the structure of the entire world. What is that? Isshin Shiba and Makoto Kurosaki's attention was attracted by the aura of the ancient desolation era. Their expressions changed. Especially when Isshin instinctively retreated. When he regained his senses, he was shocked, and his mind was in a mess. How evil! Shinozaki Manori was also mentally prepared. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. As far as she knew, voidness was the most evil thing in the world. However, compared to that strange spiral sword, the so-called voidness was not even worth mentioning. It's normal to feel fear. After all, this thing can sever the entire world. Dustless said softly as he gripped the Guili sword.
With a gentle flick of his thumb, the Guili sword spun at high speed as if it was turning its head.
A dark red hurricane of destruction swept out. The red hurricane descended upon the world. From an insignificant small tornado, it instantly expanded thousands of times. If not for Dustless deliberately suppressing it, Kongzucho would have collapsed in the blink of an eye. The red hurricane was extremely terrifying. The moment it appeared, it tore apart the void. The originally clear day dimmed, and it was as if they had arrived at the depths of the dark and cold universe. Isshin Shiba's Moonless sword, which he had used all his strength to cast, was destroyed by the hurricane. The destroyed void was extremely horrifying. The ghastly cracks were enough to send chills down one's spine. Every time it was repaired, it would be shattered by the remnant energy of the good separation sword. The cycle continued until the remnant energy of the good separation sword was completely destroyed. Dustless looked at Isshin Shiba, but he was surprised to find that the kid had disappeared. Oh F***CK. I was careless. Dustless suddenly slapped his head and cursed. That kid is really smart. He's as cunning as a rabbit. Kurosaki did not know whether to laugh or cry. He looked deeply at Dustless and said bluntly, "You can't even lie to a 3-year-old child. You must have let him go on purpose. You're helping your enemy." Dustless did not deny it. He admitted, "So what if I help my enemy? If he really has the ability to kill me in the future, I will thank God." Dustless touched the Hogyoku on his chest and looked helpless. If it was in the past, he would definitely kill the dangerous enemy in advance. However, the evolution of the Hogyoku was too strange. Dustless had to be afraid of death in order to evolve to a higher realm. What kind of person could make Dustless feel afraid? Of course, it was someone stronger than him. It would be best if Ishin Shiba could surpass Dustless's level in the future. Let's go. It's time to experiment on you. The sky was dark. In a foreign world, there was no end to it. It was dead and there was no one around. At this moment, the void distorted and a large whirlpool appeared. 2 figures stepped out of it. This is my God's might space. It's in another dimension, so no one will disturb us. Don't worry. Wuchen explained when he saw Shinozaki Manori looking around suspiciously. All right, take off your clothes. Wuchen glanced at Shinozaki Manori and said indifferently. Take off my clothes? Kurosaki's expression froze. She hesitated and was obviously embarrassed. Kurosaki looked at Dustless from the corner of her eyes.
She saw that his eyes were as clear as water. There was not a trace of lust in them.
Kurosaki gritted her teeth and nodded. However, Dustless's next sentence made her suspicious. Hurry up and take it off. I promise I won't peek at you. Wu Chen said impatiently as he felt helpless towards Shinozaki's hesitation. Kurosaki's face was full of doubts. Just as she was about to ask, the strange spiritual pressure in her body went berserk. Her expression changed and she undressed without hesitation. Chapter 1066. Shinozaki Minori's skin was as white as snow. It was smooth and smooth.
It was as if there were no impurities in it.
Shinozaki Makoto's figure was also extremely hot. She had a voluptuous figure with a curvy front and back.
She had a lot of curves in the right places and a lot of curves in the right places.
However, Dustless did not have the time to appreciate such a soul-stirring scene. It's a miracle that you can still retain your consciousness even with this thing. I give you full marks for your desire for life. There was a hole in Shinozaki Makoto's chest. It was slightly smaller than a fist and it penetrated her entire body. Shinozaki Makoto's sweat dripped down like raindrops. You still have time to be sarcastic. Heal me. I can't hold on for long. Shinozaki Makoto reminded when she saw that Dustless was not doing anything. Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly. There are some things that I need to promise you. Inside the dead silent space of Shinwei, Wuchen took out a blade of grass from nowhere and held it in his mouth frivolously. He was so relaxed and comfortable that he sat on the ground with his buttocks and remained motionless. Humph. Don't you feel pain when you talk while sitting? Shinozaki Makoto was furious and glared at Dustless. She could feel that something was wrong in her body. The power of the Great Void was gradually eating away at her spiritual pressure. Her mind was in a trance and sometimes it was good and sometimes it was bad. The roar of the Great Void came out of her mouth. It's actually very easy to suppress the Great Void in your body. You just need to. Looking at Shinozaki Makoto who was in pain, Dustless knew that it was not the time to drag it on. He said, you just need to inject a power that is completely opposite to the Great Void. In other words, the power of the Grim Reaper will suppress the Great Void's spiritual pressure and you will not become void. However, your pure blood that belongs to Quincy will be contaminated. Dustless stopped and waited for Shinozaki Makoto's decision. Just do it, there's no problem. Shinozaki Makoto's tone was firm. That's good. Seeing this, Dustless nodded slightly and immediately sneered. I will inject my own spiritual pressure and soul into your body, but there will be something special in it that will seal a certain technique. But there is no need to worry, it will not affect your normal life. Shinozaki Makoto pouted with obvious dissatisfaction. Regardless of whether the Kage affected his daily life or not, no one would want to have something inexplicable placed in his body. Forget it, let's hurry up and get ready. The cheerful Shinozaki Makoto smiled and said with a relieved tone. Dustless didn't waste any time. He quickly got up and walked to Kurosaki Mako's side. He injected his spiritual pressure and soul into her body to suppress the void. With Dustless's help, Shinozaki Jindo was safe and sound in the end, and he successfully implanted the transcription seal in Shinozaki Jindo's body. With Dustless's current strength, he could place the transcription seal into anyone's body at will, but its power would be greatly reduced. Therefore, he placed it into the soul and spiritual pressure that he had implanted in Shinozaki Mako. Once Yawatch used the Saint ability to forcibly extract Shinozaki Jindo's power, it meant that Dustless's power would be devoured by Yawatch. The Amaterasu, sealed in the transcription seal, would burn. Amaterasu was the most effective against a person's soul. Time passed, And 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Shinozaki Jindo left safely, and Dustless naturally returned to Soul Society. Soul Society held the same captain's meeting as usual. Is this true? Inside a team house, Yamamoto frowned as he listened to Dustless's report.
Yes, head captain. Dustless's expression was serious as he answered. The situation had been exaggerated by him, and the gist of it was that Shiba Ishin was severely injured and was unfortunately killed by Void White. As for Wu Chen, he went through untold hardships to kill White Void and take revenge for Shiba Ishin.
Allah! Captain Dustless's captain on a mission is always in trouble. Ikamaru Jin chuckled, and his tone was obviously criticizing. That's why, Captain Ikamaru Jin, don't ever meet me. Otherwise the next unlucky one. Maybe you. Dustless naturally didn't want to be outdone and immediately retorted. It's considered a perfect mission. But it's a pity that we lost Captain Shiba. Head Captain Yamamoto was so upset that he wanted to vomit blood. In Soul Society, there were always captains who were killed or died from other unnatural causes. Not bringing back that void is a serious crime. Mayuri said unhappily. His 12th Division put in a lot of effort to capture Void White, but in the end, they didn't even get a single strand of hair. Losing the wife and losing the soldiers. The collection of souls is almost done, and the other Hogyoku is almost complete. It won't be long before we start. Aizen sneered as he glanced at Dustless. Aizen Sosuke had an unforgettable hatred for Dustless. Ever since Dustless appeared, Aizen Sosuke felt like there was a giant wall in front of him, making him extremely difficult to deal with. Once there was a suitable opportunity, Aizen would never let Dustless go. When the new Hogyoku is completed, it's time for you to die. Aizen closed his eyes and began to think of a plan to use Kyoka Suigetsu to deal with Dustless through Central 46 to deal with Dustless. He knew that Urahara Kisuke's half Hogyoku was still in Dustless's hands, and it was impossible for him to hand it over. He could only order the entire Soul Society to deal with Dustless. Chapter 1067. After another hour, the captain's meeting finally came to an end. Every time they talked about something trivial, but old man Yamamoto was very happy about it. Every time they had a meeting, except for his sickly disciple, Jushiro Yukitake, everyone else had to be present. No one was allowed to escape. Long time no see, Chun-kun. After the captain's meeting, all the captains left one after another. Unohana Retsu came up to greet him with a smile, but soon after, her face wrinkled with dissatisfaction as she said unhappily, Chun-kun seems to have been avoiding me recently. Hearing this, Dustless bitterly smiled and decisively said, Retsu, that's just your imagination. Recently, I've been busy with work. You know that I rarely have time to rest. Almost every day, I have a lot of work to do. I haven't had the chance to relax recently. Dustless quickened his pace, wanting to escape. He was indeed purposely avoiding Unohana Retsu. This woman's nose was just too sensitive, and the word smart was not enough to describe her. Chun-kun. Unohana Retsu dragged out her words with a complicated expression. This. Looking at Unohana Retsu's sorrowful face, Dustless was speechless. He suddenly realized that he was a bit cruel. When he first came to Soul Society, it was always Unohana Retsu who helped him. Now, he was avoiding Unohana Retsu for no reason, just because she was too smart. It was indeed a bit unreasonable. Retsu, you're thinking too much. I suffered quite a bit of injuries when dealing with a great void in the modern world. I was just about to go to the 4th Division to ask for your help. Dustless changed his tone and said with a smile. Unohana Retsu nodded and led the way. Is that void very strange? It can actually injure you? Unohana Retsu asked in surprise. She knew Dustless's strength very well. Looking at the distant horizon, Dustless did not think much of it. Of course, he was just making things up to fool Unohana Retsu. Although Void was very strong, it was impossible for it to injure him. He immediately replied, Yes, he is very strong. He even knows the Death God's ghost Tao. He is worlds apart from the great Void realm that I know of. It took me a lot of effort to get rid of him. Unohua Lai did not doubt Dustless's words at all. That day, the 12th Division had indeed detected a large amount of spiritual pressure in the modern world. Looking at Unohua Lai's face, Dustless suddenly felt sorry for her. He had only made up a story,
but Hualai had actually believed it without a doubt. Dustless was touched, but at the same time, he felt guilty. Lie. Dustless turned to look at Hualai's gentle face and said seriously, "If I betray Soul Society one day, which side will you choose to side with?" Hualai was stunned upon hearing this. She stared at Dustless's face and felt troubled. This choice is truly vexing. After a while, Hua sighed helplessly. She had been loyal to Soul Society for 1,000 years, so Hualai could not easily abandon her beliefs. On the other hand, Dustless could barely be considered a close friend, so she could not easily give up her beliefs. There's no need to feel troubled, Lai. Seeing this, Dustless was somewhat disappointed. This was within his expectations. After all, he had only known Hualai for a little more than a year. 1,000 years versus a short 1 year. It was clear which was more important. If you betray Soul Society, I will definitely side with you and destroy Soul Society. After a while, Dustless suddenly said. His eyes were filled with determination, and his clear eyes were as firm as a boulder. In Dustless's heart, Soul Society and Hualai's feelings were not proportional. If he had to choose between the two, he would definitely side with Hualai without hesitation. Hualai's heart that had been sealed for 1,000 years loosened, and a warm current flowed through her heart. After 1,000 years, she, who had observed people to the smallest detail, could naturally tell that Dustless's words were from the bottom of his heart. His sincerity was without any pretense. No matter how young you are, you're still an adult. If the head captain hears this, he'll make a big fuss. Hualai did not know whether to laugh or cry, but she was very touched. All right, Chinjun, the 4th Division has a lot of injured people from a few days ago. They're still waiting for me to take care of them. I'll take my leave first. Dustless nodded and said, "Do as you wish." As expected, she still can't let go of Soul Society. Looking at Hualai's disappearing figure with a complicated expression, Dustless felt a sense of loss. At the same time, he laughed at himself. According to his previous temperament, he would not hesitate to ruthlessly destroy such an untactful woman. However, for some reason, he did not have such extreme emotions when facing Hualai. He only wanted to respect her choice and did not have any other thoughts. The sky gradually darkened. At night, the sky was filled with stars. The moonlight was like a plate, and the starlight that filled the sky was extremely beautiful. "Captain, I have something to do, I need to take leave." Matsumoto Runju had an "I'm very busy" expression, as if something big had really happened. However, Dustless ignored her. Her so-called matter was actually going to drink. "Forget it, go. Remember to come back quickly." Waving his hand, Dustless gestured for Matsumoto Runju to scram. Since he had nothing to do recently, let her do as she pleased. Dustless did not restrict the movements of these team members. Matsumoto Ranjaku suddenly smiled and disappeared in front of Dustless like a storm. "This is unfinished work?" Looking at the documents on the table in front of him, Dustless muttered to himself. Out of boredom, he picked up the documents and carefully read them. After a while, his expression became incomparably serious. "Strange, this can't be an accident. There must be a problem," Dustless said sternly after reading a few times and confirming that his eyes were not blurred. Chapter 1068. Staring at the information, Dustless was deeply puzzled. This was too strange. "Captain, is there something wrong?" Wuxia looked at the intoxicated Dustless and asked. Her captain was rarely as serious as he was today. "Where did you get this information?" Wu Chen, who came back to his senses, asked instead of answering. His tone was full of suspicion. "This?" Xiaomu and Lucia came over, and a burst of seductive fragrance also came over, causing Wu Chen's heart to become restless. "It seems that Captain Ye sent it a few days ago. At that time, the captain was rushing to the modern world for a mission, so he left it here and didn't see it until now." Tilting her head, Rukia explained. "That means no one knows." Hearing this, Dustless's mind moved. The content of the information was very simple. Just a few words. The 12th Division detected a high-density Ryatsu explosion in Central Room 46. Those so-called sages were weak, so it was impossible for them to have a Ryatsu explosion, and they seem to have died long ago.
But Sosuke Aizen's laboratory seemed to be under Central Room 46. Maybe another Hogyoku was successfully created, causing a Ryatsu explosion. Although it was just a guess, Dustless was very sure that it was the birth of another Hogyoku. When he fused two Hogyoku, a similar large-scale Ryatsu explosion occurred, very similar to what Nekomori said. He actually created another Hogyoku so quickly. Dustless was surprised. Although Aizen had his own research materials, it was unimaginable that he could create a Hogyoku in such a short time. It would only take a little more than a month at most. Creating a Hogyoku requires a lot of souls. Where did he get them? Dustless frowned and was very puzzled. Recently, there were no signs of souls disappearing. Even if there were, it was done by Subai a while ago. After being destroyed by Dustless, it was rare for souls to disappear. The amount of souls needed to create a Hogyoku was even more massive. No matter what tricks you have up your sleeves, it will all be futile in the end. Thinking about Sosuke Aizen's current strength, Dustless felt relieved. Although he had the strength of a super captain, it wasn't enough to make a difference. Let nature take its course. After a while, Dustless heaved a heavy sigh of relief. He suddenly realized that he was paying too much attention to Sosuke Aizen. In the end, Sosuke Aizen was just a small character. There was no need to care too much about his actions. In the dark laboratory, the previous East Sensei was suppressed, so only Jin and Sosuke Aizen were left. Creak! The iron door was pushed open, revealing Sosuke Aizen's figure. At this moment, he had a smile on his face and his tone was very happy. His steps were vigorous, he seemed to be in a good mood. In his hand was a blue bead that was almost identical to Dustless's Hogyoku. Jin, how's the news from our allies? They seem to be impatient. I don't know what Dustless did to provoke them. But this is good. We are weak compared to Captain Dustless. Although our allies are dangerous, we have the same goal. Plus, they helped me complete the Hogyoku. Aizen's tone was sincere, but it didn't take long before his tone turned cold. But if they want to use us, they're dreaming. I have received the exact news. Aizen played with the Hogyoku in his hand and said coldly. Fusing with Urahara Kisuke's Hogyoku can make up for this Hogyoku. So I have decided to attack Captain Dustless soon. Join forces with that group of Quincy? Ikamaru Jin asked. His tone was filled with fear. Not long ago, Quincy and Sosuke Aizen secretly contacted each other. Ikamaru Jin thought Aizen would directly refuse, but he accepted Jugram's proposal. He was willing to deal with Dustless together. As proof of their friendship, Jugram took out a large number of souls for Aizen to complete the Hogyoku quickly. Of course not. They are just rats hiding in the shadows. The key is to rely on us. Sosuke Aizen said. Ikamaru Jin scoffed at Quincy and sneered. 1,000 years ago, they left the stage of history, and now they're back with a vengeance. I don't know what relationship Captain Dustless has with Quincy. That's not important. Sosuke Aizen smiled mysteriously. Joining forces with me is just a kill with a borrowed knife. But that Jugram guy is too arrogant. After dealing with Captain Wuchan, I'll tell Head Captain Yamamoto about Quincy's whereabouts. What kind of interesting things will happen then? It's really exciting. Ikamaru Jin nodded. He agreed with Aizen's plan. Using Quincy's power to complete the Hogyoku and mobilizing the entire Soul Society to deal with Dustless. Then he will tell Yamamoto about Quincy's hidden Wandenrake. Killing several birds with one stone. Dustless didn't know what Aizen was thinking. At this moment, he was enjoying Unohana's treatment in the 4th Division. Inside the misty hot spring, Wu Chen was lying in it, swimming around in satisfaction. This was a special hot spring created by Unohana. It was the same as last time. It could be used to heal injuries. Dustless was using it as a place to have fun. Chapter 1069. Only Dustless and Unohua Lai were in the sealed room. With the experience of the hot spring last time, Dustless was much calmer this time. He even ignored Unohua Lai and swam around like a child. Chen Jun's body's recovery is really amazing. Looking closely at Dustless's smooth skin, it was white and tender, without any blemishes. It was so smooth that even Unohana found it dazzling when she looked at it through the reflection of the light. Unohua could not help but feel incredulous. She subconsciously touched her own skin and felt a sense of defeat.
She was shocked to find that her skin was not as good as Dustless. Half an hour ago, she had bandaged Dustless's skin and it was as smooth as white jade. This brat. Una Hualai shook her head and felt conflicted. She never thought that she would lose to someone because of this, especially when the opponent was a man. Chen Jun, aren't you worried? Seeing Dustless enjoying himself like a little fish, Una Hualai cautiously reminded him. Even if the sky falls, the captain will hold it up. There is no need for people like us to worry. Dustless swam around Una Hualai. The two of them only covered each other's private parts. He handed a towel to Una Hualai and suddenly stopped in front of her. You really know how to enjoy yourself. Una Hualai looked at Dustless, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She took the towel and began to gently wipe Dustless's back like last time. This feels so good. Swaying his body, Dustless was so happy that he almost fell into Una Hualai's arms. Dustless believed that he was the first person in Soul Society who could make Una Hualai take the initiative to wipe his back. Chen Jun. After a while, Una Hualai whispered into Dustless's ears. She then quietly wiped Dustless's back and did not say anything else. What is it, Lai? Dustless slightly opened his eyes and calmly asked. He felt that something was wrong with Una Hua today. She was the complete opposite of her usual self. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. Are you planning to betray Soul Society in the future? Anohua's words caused Wu Chen's eyes to instantly open. Blood vessels appeared in his eyes. He abruptly turned his head and stared at her extremely complicated face. Wu Chen's expression quickly changed, and his emotions became very varied. If it was someone else who asked him this question, his throat would have been slit. Lie, do you want to hear me tell you the truth, or a lie? His pupils emitted a cold light. Wu Chen felt that some things had to be made clear. It was not a good idea to drag it on. Of course, the truth. Una Hualai said, rolled her eyes. No one wanted to hear lies. Wu Chen nodded and immediately said bluntly, I did intend to betray Soul Society and even wanted to destroy it. The system of this world is too rotten. Of course, I also have my own selfish desire, to devour the Spirit King. Are you crazy? Una Hualai's eyes widened. For the first time, she felt that the usually wise Dustless had lost his mind. Crazy? You're right to think so. In your eyes, Spirit King is a living person with flesh and blood. How can you devour it? In reality, that is not the case. Dustless walked behind Una Hualai with a smile and began to rub her back. His technique was very experienced. Occasionally, he would deliberately take advantage of her. Perhaps because Dustless's words were too shocking, the absent-minded Una Hualai did not notice. The essence of the Spirit King's existence is to stabilize the three realms, which is the stability of the main realm, Hueco Mundo, and Soul Society's souls entering and leaving. As for the person who created the Spirit King, it was actually Soul Society. The so-called Spirit King was created by Soul Society. Without hiding anything, Chen said something shocking. We, a group of death gods, are willing to obey a created lie. Lie. Don't you think it's very funny? Maybe you don't know, but 1,000 years ago, that Yawach you fought was very likely a part of Spirit King's body. Who told you all this? It's very likely that someone made it up to deceive you. Una Hualai took a deep breath and questioned. Hearing this, Dustless slightly raised his eyebrows. Then, he whispered into Una Hualai's ear, extracting other people's memories is one of my abilities. I once extracted the memories of Yawach's subordinates. I can guarantee that all of this is real. Dustless said half-heartedly. He could not say that he had transmigrated. Una Hualai stared at Dustless's face. After a while she suddenly sighed. You should understand, I know that you're the first Sword 8. I also know that you've followed Yamamoto for 1,000 years. I also know that you have a deep relationship with Squad 0. However, telling you all of this, Lai, you should understand what I mean. Una Hualai bitterly smiled. She naturally understood what Dustless meant. In reality, he was forcing her to make a choice. She could either side with Dustless or fight with Dustless right now. I'll tell you all of this as well as my plan. I just want to say that I'm sincere towards you. I don't have any other motives. Wu Chen said indifferently. He then tried to pull Una Hua into his arms. At first, she reacted violently, but in the end, she seemed to have given up and let him do as he pleased. She even leaned on Wu Chen's shoulder tiredly with a worried expression. There's a chance. Dustless chuckled inwardly. Forcing the other party to compromise was the same as undressing June Quan. Although they were both pleasurable, being able to charm the other party was clearly more challenging and gave him a greater sense of accomplishment. This would save the girls in the system from calling Dustless an unreasonable bandit every day. Chapter 1070. Seeing Uno Hualai lying in his arms, Dustless immediately displayed his strongest ability apart from fighting. His hands began to move up and down Uno Hualai's body, teasing her sealed and pure heart. He would always touch a certain sensitive spot, causing Uno Hualai's body to gradually heat up. At the same time, his mouth did not stop, occasionally blowing hot air into Uno Hualai's ears. In just a few minutes, Uno Hualai began to pant heavily and her eyes became blurry. Hurry up and stop. After a while, Uno Hualai, who could not take it anymore, began to violently twist her body. In just a short while, Dustless was already messing with her, causing her mind to tremble. Uno Hualai even suspected that in another half an hour, her IQ would drop to negative levels. You're not old, but you're an expert in this area. Uno Hualai rolled her eyes at Dustless and pouted. Hee. There's no harm in having more skills. In this day and age, it's important to develop in all areas. Dustless laughed embarrassedly and teased Uno Hualai. At the same time, he was overjoyed. After so many years, he was no longer the ignorant brat from before. Naturally, he knew the principle of adapting to changes. He immediately put on a loyal expression and promised solemnly, Lai, you've helped me for so many years, and I will never forget your kindness. I only have one heart that has never changed, a heart that only weighs 200 grams. The only place left in my heart is you. After saying that, if not for Uno Hualai's existence, Dustless would have given himself a slap. Uno Hualai had only taken care of him for a year. As for many years, that was complete nonsense. Once the inspiration came, stopping was as hard as ascending to the heavens. Fortunately, Uno Hualai did not care about this. She softly pondered, I'm not interested in what you said before. I just want to know what you think of the future of Soul Society. Do you plan to eliminate all of the death gods? Hearing this, Dustless resolutely shook his head. He had never thought of such a ridiculous idea before. My goal is to devour the Soul Kings, or rather, replace them. Those death gods can't give me any benefits, and killing them will take a lot of time. It's not worth it, and there's no value. Without even thinking about it, Dustless directly spoke the truest thoughts in his heart. Is that so? That's for the best. Uno Hualai let out a sigh of relief. Her tense nerves also visibly relaxed. She had a special relationship with Soul Society, and countless people who were familiar with her. Naturally, she did not want them all to be killed by Dustless. At that moment, his thoughts of resisting Dustless were greatly reduced. By the way, why do you know so, from the first generation from the sword? Dustless. From Dustless, lies from lies, ants, lies, lie, the number from the hand in hand, from the soul from God. Because back then, Quincy was not destroyed. Without hiding anything, Dustless directly said, his subordinate, you might know Jugram, is the one who led Quincy to continue to struggle at death's door, silently waiting for the day Yawatch awakens. That man didn't die? Uno Hualai's mind went blank, and she asked in shock. Of course, he's the god of Quincy. How could he be killed so easily? Back then, he was only defeated by the captain, who sealed him in the end. Dustless softly explained, ignoring the shocked Uno Hualai, and continued, not only did he not die, but Yawatch also had the same goal as me, devouring the Soul King. Soul King? What's so special about him? It's not like he's a spiritual pressure that you can eat as you please. Uno Hualai felt a headache coming on. Soul Society's guards were absolutely loyal, but when it came to Dustless and Yawatch, they were treated like food, and anyone could take a bite out of them. I told you before that the so-called Soul King was actually created by Soul Society to stabilize the entry and exit of souls. In other words, it's an amalgamation of souls. Devouring it means that one's soul will explosively increase, so it's naturally a target for tigers and wolves. Dustless lightly smiled as he explained, his tone carrying a hint of passion. If Naruto was a place where one fought for chakra,
then Shinigami was a place where one fought for souls. The strength of one's soul determined the strength of one's spiritual pressure. Gulp. Uno Hualai choked, clearly tempted. She naturally understood the importance of souls to Shinigami. Not just Shinigami, even voids had a huge effect, and the benefits were unimaginable. If that's the case, then why hasn't anyone tried to take the Soul King? If it's really as golden as you say, then it should attract the attention of all creatures. Uno Hualai continued to ask. It wasn't that she doubted Dustless's words, but that it was simply too shocking and beyond anyone's expectations. It's not that they don't want to devour it, but there's a huge drawback to devouring the Soul King, and it's very likely that it will harm them. After the Soul King collapses, the three realms, Hueco Mundo, Soul Society, and the modern world, will all collapse. Now do you understand the use of the Soul King? What's your choice, Lai? Dustless expectantly asked, his face full of hope. You also want to devour the Soul King? Uno Hualai frowned. After the Soul King disappeared, it would mean that the entire world would turn into ashes, and the consequences would be unimaginable. At that time all living things might disappear. Hueco Mundo, the modern world, and Soul Society would all disappear, becoming history. No, I'm not Yawatch. He indeed wants to devour the Soul King after killing it. Although I also want to kill the Soul King, the meaning is different. In other words, I only want to replace it and become the new Soul King, dominating the entire world. Chapter 1071. Unohana stared straight into Dustless's eyes. She could tell that it was not a lie, and she could clearly feel Dustless's heartbeat. I'm going to reject your offer. Are you going to kill me now? Uno Hualai changed the topic and spoke in a different tone. Silence me. Dustless shook his head resolutely. Even if Unohana went to the head captain, he would not be afraid. That's not important. Even if head captain Yamamoto knew that I would betray him, he would not be able to stop me. The decision has always been in my hands. Soul Society has no right to choose. Wu Chen spoke frankly and confidently, filled with deep confidence. Moreover, Ray, you seem to have forgotten something. No matter what, Soul Society is the unlucky one. Even if I let them go, don't forget that Yawatch is still there. Eradicating all the Grim Reapers and washing away the shame of the past is his long-cherished wish. His casual words caused Uno Hualai's heart to fall to the bottom. That's about it. Dustless's mind raced. He knew that as long as he could break Unohana's last line of defense, he would get what he wanted. He continued to pressure her. According to my observations, Wandless Empire is far stronger than the Grim Reapers. Although the Sternritter Legion only has a few dozen people, they have the strength to wipe out all the Grim Reapers. Unohana's words stirred up 1,000 ripples. After recovering from her shock, Unohana questioned, how is that possible? 1,000 years ago, Quincy's strength was only Ezo. It's impossible for him to defeat Soul Society. Seeing the disbelief on Unohana's face, Dustless chuckled and continued, take note, when I say all the Grim Reapers, I don't just mean Soul Society, but also Squad Zero. In the end, the Sternritter Legion did defeat the Godii 13 and reached the Spirit King Palace. Even Yawatch's personal guards were wiped out. Ray, Yawatch is a threat in the future. Don't forget that there's still a vicious dog eyeing Soul Society. He's just as ambitious and dangerous as Yawatch. Dustless suddenly revealed. His tone was full of meaning, and a figure immediately appeared in Unohana's mind. You mean Sosuke Aizen? Her thoughts paused for a second as Uno Hualai couldn't help but say, I've always felt that he was very dangerous. He always looked harmless on the surface, but he always gave me the feeling of a poppy flower. You're so smart. Dustless looked at Unohana Retsu in surprise. He had a new understanding of this woman's intelligence. She was probably the only one in the Godii 13 who could see through Sosuke Aizen. But he's very meticulous. It'll be difficult to catch him. Unohana Retsu frowned. She felt that Sosuke Aizen was a difficult opponent. That's normal. Dustless's expression didn't change. Aizen was wise and shrewd, and he had Kyoka Suigetsu to protect him from the wind and rain. The chance of catching him was close to zero. What did Soul Society do? Unohana Retsu sighed. Unohana Retsu let out a long sigh. Her voice was filled with worry as she said in annoyance,
Before, Yawatch was already a headache, and now there's you and Sosuke Aizen. Plus, that Yawatch that should have died is about to see the light of day again. Soul Society is truly plagued with disasters.
Who knows? Dustless shrugged.
Soul Society was indeed in a difficult situation. It was synonymous with tragedy. Whether it's a coincidence or fate, Soul Society is about to face a great change.
Which side will you side with in the end?
Then, the room became silent. Dustless waited for Unohana Retsu's decision. She was smart and knew what to choose. Unohana Retsu rolled her eyes at Dustless and said helplessly, "If it's really like what you said, I have no choice." Looking at Dustless, Unohana Retsu didn't need to say anything. Hearing this, Dustless's lips curled into a smile. He hugged Unohana Retsu and was about to do the most primitive thing, when an untimely voice sounded. "I only agreed to help you, but I never said I'd give myself to you." Unohana Retsu couldn't help but laugh at Dustless's anxiousness. What does that have to do with anything? Since we're already honest with each other, why don't we take it a step further? We're in the same boat anyway. Dustless directly pulled off the towel on his body, revealing his strong body. "No." Unohana Retsu refused again. Although her voice was as soft and pleasant as before, Dustless could hear the meaning behind it. "You dare to talk to me like this? Do you believe that I'll directly?" "Forget it." Unohana Retsu poured a bucket of cold water on his head. Dustless was inwardly annoyed. Just as he was about to forcefully take Unohana Retsu's hand, he saw the sadness in her eyes, and the flames in his heart disappeared. There's still a long way to go. Now is not the time. After saying this, Dustless quietly hugged Unohana Retsu, feeling the warmth of each other's bodies. Perhaps it was because he was too tired recently, but a drowsy feeling spread throughout his body. Dustless was about to fall asleep when a soft, jade-like hand suddenly grabbed his most important part. His pupils instantly opened and enlarged several times. Looking over, he saw that it was Unohana Retsu, who had a shy expression. "I'm sorry, Chen Jun. I still have some things to do right now. I'll leave them to you in the future." Seeing Dustless's gaze that could melt a person, Unohana Retsu lowered her head. The hard thing in her hand made her feel awkward. "Please continue. Do whatever you want. Ignore me." After saying this, Dustless closed his eyes in satisfaction. Chapter 1072. It was not until 2 hours later that Wu Chen walked out of the hot spring dizzily. His expression was absent-minded and his eyes were filled with confusion. Looking strangely at the calm Uno Hualai beside her, Wu Chen felt ashamed of her inferiority. She was sure that Uno Hualai was still a virgin, but her knowledge in certain aspects made Wu Chen, a veteran in the field of flowers, feel ashamed. According to Uno Hualai, I was born to understand those things. TSK. I finally have an ally in Soul Society, and one that is extremely reliable. Dustless smiled as he looked at Uno Hualai's back. Originally, he had wanted to tempt Uno Hualai into putting her hands on his mouth in order to pursue the feeling of the extreme. At first, Uno Hualai had rejected him resolutely, leaving no room for negotiation. Later, after Dustless signed a few unfair terms, Uno Hualai accepted Dustless's suggestion and used her mouth to seduce Dustless. Even until now, Wu Chen still hadn't had enough of the feeling of walking on clouds. His mind was still in a trance, and the scene of Uno Hualai lying on top of him kept echoing in his mind. Smiling so wretchedly. "I'm sure you're up to no good." Uno Hualai turned her head and glanced at Dustless. Seeing his naughty smile, she felt awkward. In reality, she had done those actions under Dustless's half-threat and half-seduction. Now that she thought about it, she felt angry and regretful. Uno Hualai's throat was still very uncomfortable, and her jawbones were not normal when she spoke. "You must have used some trick to make me lose my mind, and that's why you succeeded." Uno Hualai's eyes shone with an ominous glint as she looked like she wanted to swallow Dustless alive. "What does that have to do with me?" Dustless was speechless. Uno Hualai was even more aggressive than him just now. This woman had been suppressed for 1,000 years. Once her conservative feelings were released, the destructive power she could create was enormous. Even though it was only an hour, Dustless was almost squeezed dry. He was swaying left and right. "All right, I used an illusion to trick you." Dustless could not take it anymore and said helplessly.
She knew that Uno Hualai was trying to make things difficult for her. Boom boom boom. At this moment, a huge spiritual pressure exploded, and a destructive shockwave swept through the entire Soul Society. Dustless and Uno Hualai, who were thousands of meters away, could feel the violent tremors. Uno Hualai and Dustless looked at each other and frowned.
Dustless said, "From the nature of the spiritual pressure, it seems to be outside of void and death.
Could it be that Sosuke Aizen has created another monster?" Uno Hanaretsu guessed. After Dustless's reminder, she already knew most of Sosuke Aizen's experiments. Dustless even used Tsukuyami to let Uno Hanaretsu see what Sosuke Aizen was doing. It shouldn't be. Strange, this spiritual pressure is somewhat familiar. Wu Chen said. He always felt that he had seen this powerful spiritual pressure before. Let's go take a look together. Seeing Dustless's confusion, Uno Hanaretsu suggested. There's no need for that. I feel like something's not right this time. Just leave this matter to me. Wu Chen shook his head resolutely. Although he was very confident in Uno Hualai's strength, and the first Sword 8 was extremely powerful, he was not an invincible existence. There were many people who could suppress Uno Hualai. Bringing Uno Hanaretsu would be a problem. Especially Dustless's right eye twitched. He felt like this was not normal. I'll be going first, Retsu. Before Uno Hanaretsu could reply, Dustless turned into a flash of light and disappeared into the clear sky. In an open area, two beautiful figures were lying down. One was wearing a short skirt, and the other had long green hair. Both had great figures, and they were both women. They were wearing the same uniform, so they were obviously from the same faction. Bambietta and Candace. What's going on? Shouldn't they be in Wandless Empire? Why are they in Soul Society? It seems like they are being attacked by the death gods. Dustless, who had rushed over, was shocked.
He extended his eye power to the limit and made sure he was not mistaken.
Could it be that Jugram found out that they betrayed Yawatch? That shouldn't be the case. Even if he found out that they betrayed Yawatch, he should have killed Candace and Bambietta. Leaving them in Soul Society is too stupid. That might have exposed Wandless Empire. Dustless's train of thought hit a dead end. He started to think about Jugram's intentions, but he could not figure it out. At the same time, the death gods on the ground were attacking Candace and Bambietta.
The death gods leading them were actually the smiling Ikamaru Jin and Mayuri.
TSK, TSK, TSK. It's rare to see Quincy like you. Be careful. Don't kill them. These two Quincy girls are my test subjects. If you hurt them, I'll make you pay with your lives.
Mayuri raised his voice and roared, his tone carrying a warning.
Strange. Their strength seems to have weakened a lot. Dustless, who was quietly observing, was puzzled. The two girls used to be captains, but now they were not even as strong as vice-captains. They were at a disadvantage and were in a bitter fight. No matter what, Candace and Bambietta cannot be lost. In that case, I can only kill you death gods first. I have to kill them without anyone knowing. With a decision in his mind, the vigorous spiritual pressure in Wu Chen's body suddenly began to surge. Currently, Candace and Bambietta were very useful to Dustless, and it was necessary to find out why their strength had decreased. Therefore, in order not to be exposed, he had to eliminate Ikamaru Jin and Mayuzumi Riki. Chapter 1073. The captain's strength was extremely powerful. Even a scientist like Mayuri was extremely strong, especially through various abnormal experiments to improve his strength, which was also unique. Although the method was not complementary, it was undeniable that some of Mayuri's research was very useful. Captain Dustless, what brings you here? It's rare. Mayuri looked up at the black spot that was rapidly approaching, and couldn't help but ask in confusion. While talking, Dustless also landed on the ground, only a few steps away from Nico Ray and Ikamaru Jin. How did you find them, Captain Mayuri? Pointing at Candace and Bambietta who were besieged, Dustless asked as usual. The Technology Development Bureau doesn't seem to have the time to search for Quincy. Of course not. Looking for this group of trash? What a joke. They're just test subjects. I'm very busy, and I don't have time to look for this group of white mice. Thank you, Captain Jin. Mayuri's face was flushed, and there was a hint of gratitude in his tone as he said excitedly, "This is all thanks to Captain Ikamaru Jin.
She was the one who provided me with the traces of these two Quincy. Furthermore, there's something wrong with these two Quincy girls. They're completely different from the Quincy that I studied before. At the end of his words, Mayuri waved his arms, and his slender fingertips jumped with cold light, which could easily pierce the skin, making people shudder. So it's Jin. Hearing this, Dustless's gaze immediately turned to Jin, and his eyes turned cold. At the same time, Jin also looked at Dustless, and his eyes were full of ridicule and schadenfreude, waiting for Dustless to make a fool of himself. Captain Jin. After sorting out his thoughts, Dustless was not in a hurry to act, but asked directly, "These two are Quincy, you should at least explain their origin." Yes, where did these two guys come from?" Mayuri nodded wildly, and his face was surging with morbid excitement. He said fanatically, "They must have accomplices. Catch them all and send them to my operating table. This is the essence of Quincy's existence." Ikamaru Jin was extremely calm when he heard this. He had expected this. "When I was patrolling Luhun Street, I noticed unusual Ryatsu fluctuations. When I rushed over, I happened to meet these two Quincy. I originally wanted to kill them directly, but I heard that Captain Nye was recently doing experiments on Quincy, so I found him." Ikamaru Jin spoke with assurance. His words were clear and logical, without any loopholes for others to exploit. "Looks like Jugram noticed their abnormality." Dustless lowered his head and looked at Jin. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he thought, "This is definitely not a coincidence." Aizen and Jugram finally joined hands. Ikamaru Jin was just Sosuke Aizen's lackey. Now that he's come out to bite people, Sosuke Aizen must have instigated him. "Let's get rid of them as soon as possible and let the two of them escape." Sensing that there was no one around, Dustless immediately made a decision. "I deeply admire Captain Nye's persistent pursuit of science, but there's only one worry." This inexplicable sentence suddenly attracted Mayuri's attention. Frowning, Mayuri asked, "Worry? Captain Dustless using such vulgar words to describe me is too tasteless." Mayuri said with dissatisfaction, but he still asked curiously, "What's more, there's absolutely nothing in this world that I don't understand." "What are you referring to?" "You definitely don't understand this." "That's right, the world doesn't understand, including myself." With a bloodthirsty smile on his face, Dustless said mysteriously, "This guy. What's wrong with him today?" Ikamaru Jin's smile disappeared, and his heart suddenly throbbed, as if he was being stared at by an invisible ancient beast. He felt uncomfortable and uneasy. Looking at Dustless, his eyes were full of vigilance. "There's nothing in this world that I don't understand. Tell me." Mayuri raised his voice and said impatiently, "Is that so? In that case, I'll fulfill Captain Nye's wish." The murderous aura hidden all over his body instantly solidified, and the nearly solidified Ryatsu directly locked onto Mayuri and Ikamaru Jin. Sensing that something was wrong, Ikamaru Jin's pupils shrunk, and he immediately retreated without hesitation. "You don't understand the miserable state you'll be in after being killed." Dustless spat out cold air, and the murderous aura in his body boiled. The black sharp light was faintly discernible, filling the surrounding space, and surrounded Mayuri and Ikamaru Jin. The corner of his mouth slightly opened, and under Mayuri's stunned gaze, countless black lights eroded him. Heido 90. Black Coffin. The black lights that surrounded the two of them instantly turned from nothingness to reality, and released a terrifying cold light. There were tens of thousands of them, and each ray of light was extremely fatal. Ikamaru Jin and Mayuri were like an extremely dense magnetic field, attracting all the black lights. "You bastard." Mayuri's voice hadn't even fallen when the massive black light brushed past his shoulder. "Puchi! Puchi! Puchi!" The densely packed blade slanted from all directions, instantly crushing Mayuri's entire body, mercilessly tearing apart his fragile skin, destroying his internal organs, and in the blink of an eye, he was turned into a human stick, and his blood flowed like a river. Although Ikamaru Jin had fled in advance, he was still in a miserable state, and he was barely gasping for breath. "You are a pervert. This kind of death is very suitable for you, Captain Nye. There's no need to thank me." Glancing at Mayuri, who was no longer in a human shape, Dustless's face was filled with indifference, and he turned around and walked towards Ikamaru Jin with his sword in hand.
Chapter 1074. Ikamaru Jin could no longer maintain his sly smile. He was terrified as he touched the wounds all over his body. He had never felt that he was so close to death. In that instant just now, if he hadn't sensed the danger of Wu Chen, perhaps he would have been cut into pieces by countless blades just like Nirvana Cocoon. It was extremely miserable. "Get out of my way!" Along with a delicate shout, Candace and Bambietta pushed back the death gods who were besieging them. They were temporarily out of danger. They glanced at Wu Chen helplessly and hurriedly left. They were just burdens to Wu Chen now. "You bastard, I will not let you go." Nye Huli struggled on the brink of death. His entire body had been turned into a human stick. His limbs were broken, but he was still gnashing his teeth at Wu Chen. His distorted face wished he could tear Wu Chen into pieces. Oh, hearing this, Dustless glanced at Mayuri and sneered. "Tear me into pieces? With your level? Don't joke around. Close your eyes in peace, Captain Mayuri." He gathered Ryatsu in his right hand, and a huge red disc flew out. Heido number 54. Waste Flame. Mayuri couldn't move an inch. The disc flame along with his body exploded into ashes. Mayuri, who was gritting his teeth, disappeared completely. Allah is really ruthless, killing a captain just like that. Ikamaru Jin forced a smile, but his body was bleeding non-stop. It was as if there was a hole in his body. "But it's a pity that I'm not Mayuri. It's impossible to kill me." Ikamaru Jin grinned slightly, revealing a cold smile. He was very confident. "Can't kill you?" Hearing this, Dustless looked at him with disdain and sneered. "I didn't kill you on purpose. I still have something to ask you, Captain Ikamaru Jin." For some people, it didn't matter if they were killed. They were just pawns, no big deal. For some people, they were more useful alive, so there was no need to kill them. Sure enough, these captains aren't simple. Each of them has a variety of trump cards. I'm afraid it won't be long before we leave Soul Society. Dustless's sharp senses detected that Nei Huli had turned into a mysterious liquid body and drilled into the crevice, leaving quietly. "Is Sosuke Aizen's other Hogyoku completed?" Dustless suddenly asked. Ikamaru Jin was shocked. "You know that Captain Aizen is developing Hogyoku?" Ikamaru Jin's heart was in turmoil, and he suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough. The previous Hogyoku was destroyed by Dustless, and now he was secretly developing a new one. Only he and Aizen knew about it. Looks like that is indeed the case. Then the source of the soul should be Jugram. Feeling relieved, Dustless immediately closed in on Jin Ikamaru like a storm. The Kusanagi sword in his hand came down in torrents, wanting to split Jin Ikamaru in half. Shocked, Ikamaru Jin immediately reacted violently. On top of his head, there was a faint blue light, and it quickly condensed into a solid wall. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. Naive. Dustless saw this and just gently raised his finger. An array of golden light gathered at the tip of his foot. Light speed kick. The extremely dense light slanted down and hit the transparent barrier. Looks like it was blocked. Jin breathed a sigh of relief, and the goosebumps all over his body also calmed down. For a long time, Dustless's strength was like a nightmare that shrouded him and Aizen's heart. Blocked. Indeed, but that's just to attract your attention. A ghostly voice came from behind, and Jin felt a chill down his spine. His heart was in his throat, and he immediately retreated. However, in front of Dustless, that laughable speed was meaningless. He rushed forward, and the scorching hot sword light pierced through Jin. Puchi! On Jin's chest, a long and narrow scar was extremely conspicuous, and it almost covered his entire abdomen. His body was like a kite with a broken string, shaking uncontrollably. Clang! With his Zanpakuto on the ground, Jin raised his head and looked at the approaching figure. His body was extremely weak, and the scarlet wound on his chest was quickly devouring his vitality, stamina, and energy. It was just a simple slash, but it was enough to crush Jin's arrogance and kill him within seconds. They were not at the same level at all. This guy is the same kind of monster as Aizen. Jin's brain cells were thinking 10 times faster than usual. However, a black shadow approached him and coldly raised his Zanpakuto. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, another beautiful figure stood in front of Ikamaru Jin, staring at Dustless. Ranju! Get out of the way! Dustless's tone softened. Captain Mayuri has already informed the entire Soul Society of what you did. Matsumoto Runju shook her head and pulled out her zanpakuto. Looking at Matsumoto Runju's serious expression, Dustless smacked his lips and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Runju. I pulled you guys into the 7th Division, but in the end, I didn't give you anything and ended up in this situation." Whoosh whoosh. 2 more figures appeared on the ground. They weren't tall, but they were Rukia and Hinamori. The head captain and the rest of the division captains are here. Captain, you should surrender and don't do anything stupid. Rukia and Hinamori also advised. Hearing this, Dustless smiled, and the Kusanagi sword in his hand glowed brighter. If that's the case, I can only destroy the Gotii 13. Chapter 1075. It was a casual sentence, but it was as simple as eating and drinking. It was full of confidence and disdain for the Shinigami. There were no superfluous emotions, only naked contempt. You 3 should leave this place. The next battle is beyond your imagination, and it's not suitable for you. The light of the Kusanagi sword dimmed a bit. Dustless chose to let them go. Under the boundless spiritual pressure perception, Wu Chen clearly captured the traces of the captains galloping over. The 3 girls looked at each other and surrounded Dustless at the same time. You are still too weak, and this stage is not suitable for you. Try your best to survive in the future. Suddenly, a powerful repulsive force came out of his body, and they were easily killed. Shinra Tensei. Matsumoto Ranjaku, Hinamori, and Rukia were all sent flying. Dustless also remembered their old friendship and didn't hurt them. Great Sinner, 7th Division Captain, Dustless. A roar filled with endless anger resounded through the sky, and a ferocious shadow behind him covered the sky. An enormous giant with a dignified expression and an ancient, solemn and dignified aura appeared. His entire being was even larger than a gigantic mountain. His murderous intent locked onto Dustless, and he couldn't wait to eat him alive. 9th Division Captain, Sakumura Zuazhan. Dustless glanced at Sakumura Zuazhan coldly, then looked at the void in front of him. Just bring it on, and don't expect me to repent. There were several black shadows attacking from that direction. Great Sinner, Genryusai-sensei trusted you so much, and you betrayed him. Sakumura Zuazhan said angrily with hatred. Hearing this, Wu Chen frowned coldly and said mockingly, "Stop lying. You just want to take revenge for East Deity. If you have any means, just bring it on." As if the wound in his heart had been pierced, Zuazhan suddenly flew into a rage. Clang clang clang. With a roar, the giant saber was pulled out of its sheath. It was more than 10 meters long, shining with cold light under the refraction of the sun. It could easily cut Soul Society into pieces. It's just a facade. Dustless's eyes were fixed on the front the whole time. Only those figures could move Dustless. As for Zuazhan, he was just a noob who could kill him with one move. Die! The huge long blade was filled with the anger of the left side of the village. It fell down mercilessly. The powerful force was enough to annihilate the whole world, leaving behind afterimages visible to the naked eye. Dustless didn't try to block it, nor did he try to dodge it. Therefore, the left formation of the immortal village successfully hit him. Ka. On the ground, the center of the impact directly collapsed, revealing an incomparably huge crack that rapidly spread to the surroundings. In the blink of an eye, the ground within a radius of a few hundred meters was stirred up into a mess. Everyone was worried about Dustless's courage, and they were afraid that the captain would directly release his zanpakuto and kill Dustless. This was a joke with his life. Chapter 1076. As expected, Dustless's words attracted the head captain's hostility. However, there were too many people who wanted to flatter the head captain. Before the head captain could do anything, someone else took his place and attacked Dustless. Bakudo 63. 6-rod light prison. 6 enormous light ribbons attacked from all directions. In the blink of an eye, Dustless was restrained, and his entire person was fixed and unable to move. Captain Aizen, you've been working so hard to deal with me. You've been trying so hard to set up all kinds of schemes. His gaze fell on the elegant man. The one who took the head captain's place was Sosuke Aizen, who was filled with righteous indignation. Sosuke Aizen ignored Dustless's sarcasm with a smile of victory on his face. He was the only one who could see it. It's over.
Captain of the 7th Division. A burst of cold light struck.
In an instant, a proud little loli flashed in front of Wu Chen and used her special golden weapon to touch Wu Chen's throat.
It was the captain of the 2nd Division, Xiaofan.
Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Not only that, the other captains also rushed over and subdued Dustless in an instant. Dustless was completely surrounded by captains all around him. His throat, arms, legs, and other organs were all restrained. It seemed like the outcome was already decided. There was no way out for Dustless.
The head captain trusted you so much, but you betrayed him.
Aizen pointed at Dustless with a trembling finger as he reprimanded him.
Aizen's eyes were spitting fire, and his murderous intent was obvious.
Aizen's acting was flawless, and there wasn't a single flaw in it. Everything was so perfect, extremely practiced, and there were no flaws. Dustless glanced at Sosuke Aizen and said, "If your strength and acting were at the same level, you would be invincible, Captain Aizen." "Humph. Don't invert right and wrong, everyone's eyes are clear. Even if I'm not strong enough, don't forget that the Goatee 13 is a team." Aizen Sosuke retorted. Staring at Dustless's calm eyes, Aizen Sosuke felt that he was being looked down upon.
Dustless's calm eyes were looking at him as if he was a clown.
"Hurry up and put handcuffs on this traitor." Soi Feng's expression turned cold as she ordered her subordinates. Hearing this, the black-clothed Xing Jun rushed over and put the black handcuffs and leg cuffs on Dustless's feet and hands. It seemed that he felt that it wasn't safe enough, so he deliberately added a few more handcuffs. After all, this guy was a captain-level Grim Reaper, so he had to take special care of him. "In that case, it's finally over," Xiaofan said casually, but her tone was bleak. She was clearly dissatisfied with the ending. A captain was captured so easily without any resistance. He was even easier to deal with than a normal thug. How boring. Little girl. You're right, it's indeed over. Looking at the handcuffs on his hands and feet, Dustless didn't react at all. His movements were normal, as if they didn't exist. He didn't even need to use his hands and feet to deal with this group of people. However, the one that's about to end and become history is Soul Society. Dustless said coldly. Everyone was stunned when they heard that. They glared angrily at Wu Chen. Their gazes were filled with dissatisfaction. They were about to open their mouths to teach this arrogant kid a lesson. A strange sense of danger appeared in everyone's heart.
Wang! The ground trembled slightly, and the dust particles moved along with it.
The tremors went from small to large, tearing holes in the ground. Then, under everyone's shocked gaze, the ground began to change drastically.
Kakaka? A terrifying force tore the ground apart, revealing the depths of the ground.
Deep red magma was boiling, and the high temperature made everyone's heart turn cold. Could it be? Seeing this scene, Head Captain Yamamoto's face changed, and an absurd idea appeared in his mind. His old eyes subconsciously looked at Dustless, and his heart turned cold. He used all his strength to remind him, "Get out of there, this is 96 Dao Breaker cremation." The consequences of being hit are unimaginable. All the captains' faces changed, and they all retreated, distancing themselves from Dustless. "It's too late." With a sneer, Dustless's face turned cold. Dao Breaker's 96 Dao Breaker cremation. A large dark red knife-shaped flame rose from the ground, and the clear sky instantly turned dark red. All the moisture in the atmosphere, including the spiritual droplets, evaporated. The huge destructive force pulled the entire Soul Society in, and several cracks that stretched for several kilometers appeared on the ground.
Looking from the sky to the ground, the central area where Dustless stood, within a radius of 10 kilometers, had almost turned into black charcoal and a forbidden land.
Bang bang bang. This kind of indiscriminate attack completely ignored the existence of distance, and running was useless. Immediately, several captains fell like birds with broken wings. Floating bamboo. Captain Shiomu. Captain Zaraki. The members of the various teams who rushed over looked at their own burnt captains, and they were all stunned for a moment. All of them looked at Dustless with handcuffs and leg cuffs in horror. What kind of monster is this guy? Even with handcuffs and leg cuffs, he can still kill 3 captains in an instant? This is simply cheating. Although Dustless's figure was very thin, It made everyone retreat. When they were glanced at by his cold eyes, they felt a sense of panic as if they had fallen into hell. Chapter 1077. The surrounding reapers were stunned, and their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. That's not right. That kind of large-scale hado was obviously centered around him. Why is he not injured? That's right. I just saw that he was hit, but he was still fine. How is this possible? If the hado could severely injure the three captains, it must be able to injure him too. Humph. Ignorant and inexperienced.
I heard recently that the members of the other divisions are saying that the captain of the 7th division is a monster.
Is he really a monster? I've also heard this rumor. Head Captain Yamamoto's face turned ugly when he heard these discussions. Cold light condensed in his eyes as he stared at Dustless. He seemed to have thought of something as he gritted his teeth and said, Kenpachi Ghost Yen Chang was also killed by number 96 Hado. Is this related to you?
Dustless did not deny it as he slightly moved his sore body.
That's right. In order to become the captain of the 11th division, I did kill him in Hueco Mundo. It just so happened that that guy didn't like me, and I didn't like him, so I just killed him in Hueco Mundo.
You bastard!
Head Captain Yamamoto's eyes were about to burst out of his sockets. High-density hot Ryatsu erupted from his body.
Although he did not do anything, a large area of the void behind him was strangely burning, and the ground was turned into black charcoal.
Suppressing the surging killing intent in his heart, Old Man Yamamoto suddenly thought of the captain who had recently met with an accident.
He shouted in a deep voice, Captain Shiba should also be killed by you.
This old man knows his character. He would never do something like turning into a void. I did injure him. In order to fight with me, he lost all his Ryatsu power.
However, it is an indisputable fact that he turned into a void.
Dustless said casually. He had done so many bad things that he could not even count them. What's your purpose? This old man thinks that I have treated you well.
Since the establishment of the Gotei 13, you are the only one who joined the Reapers within a year and became the captain.
Head Captain Yamamoto roared. His suppressed voice was like the sign of a volcanic eruption. If Dustless did not give him a reasonable explanation, the sharpness of Ryujin Jaka would definitely burn the entire Soul Society.
Stop lying.
Wu Chen snorted and sneered. There are only two reasons why you promoted me so quickly. First, Soul Society can't just ignore a stranger who is as strong as a captain. Second, you want me to be the captain so that you can monitor me better. This will cause a lot of conflicts in the Gotei 13. Many people don't like me, so they will turn their attention to me. This is a covert surveillance.
So what?
Seeing that his purpose was exposed by Dustless, Head Captain Yamamoto still did not give up.
If they were not careful, it could lead to the end of the three realms: the modern world, Hueco Mundo, and Soul Society.
Soul Society couldn't afford such a heavy price. Shinigami couldn't afford it. It was heavier than annihilating Gotei 13. Chapter 1078. Yamamoto's anger spread throughout Soul Society. He originally thought that Dustless was dissatisfied with Soul Society, but he didn't expect him to target Soul King. This has crossed Yamamoto's bottom line, and he couldn't tolerate it. Boom boom boom. Surging spiritual pressure burst out unscrupulously, wanting to annihilate the entire Soul Society. The sharpness of Ryujin Jaka was beyond the imagination of the world, especially now that Head Captain Yamamoto was still angry. Its power was even more terrifying. TSK. As expected of the strongest Zanpakuto, and this is under the condition of not releasing it. If it's released, the strongest Zanpakuto that can destroy the world is worthy of its name.
Dustless sighed with emotion. His words were filled with desire and passion, and he made up his mind. Such a good thing will increase my power to another level.
I'll find time to go to the system to train old man Yamamoto and snatch his Ryujin Jaka. This exaggerated Zanpakuto could be called a perfect existence. The only flaw was that Ryujin Jaka was too powerful, and it could collapse the world with a raise of the hand. Old man Yamamoto, leave this guy to us captains. You'd better go and watch the battle, otherwise, Soul Society will be destroyed before the battle begins. Shun Sui resisted the blazing Ryatsu and approached Yamamoto.
Yes, Captain.
All the captains nodded. Yamamoto's Ryatsu didn't distinguish between friend and foe, and the target was not only Dustless, but also the captains. He didn't severely injure Dustless, but defeated them first. This joke wasn't funny at all. It's not too late for you to go up when we can't do it, Shunsui suggested, looking at Dustless with murderous eyes. His good friend, Jushiro Yucatake, was almost instantly killed by Dustless. Jushiro Yucatake, who was already weak and sickly, was in an especially bad condition, and now he was only gasping for breath. Well, you all besiege this man together. It's best if you can capture him alive. I have some questions to ask him. If you can't, kill him on the spot. Yamamoto extinguished the violent Ryatsu all over his body, and said in a deep voice, "You bunch of trash want to deal with me?" Dustless sneered again and again. He looked at the captains with contempt and said sarcastically, "To deal with you captain-level minions, I'll give you both a handicap." His arrogant voice was like rolling thunder, spreading through the entire drifting Soul Street, the entire quiet Soul Courtyard, and the entire Soul Society. Ha ha ha. In that case you can go to hell now, my former Sword 8. A crazy and ferocious smile came from behind, and Dustless suddenly looked up. A man with a burnt body stood up, holding a Zanpakuto full of sawtooth, and rushed towards Dustless. It was the current captain of the 11th Division, Zaraki Kenpachi. How disappointing. I thought you'd make some progress, but it seems like I was wrong. A beast like you will never be enlightened. Glancing at Zaraki, Dustless ignored him. The spiritual pressure hidden in his body burst out for the first time since he came to Soul Society. Boom boom boom. Boundless golden light burst out with endless overbearingness. The void began to distort, and cracks began to appear on the ground. Everyone felt a tingling pain on their skin. This guy's spiritual pressure. What kind of joke is this? This is far from being comparable to captain-level Ryatsu. Shunsui said in disbelief, and immediately saw the cruel smile on Dustless's face, and thought to himself, could it be that this guy's spiritual pressure can be increased? Shunsui, who felt something was wrong, quickly exclaimed, and suddenly shouted at the Shinigami behind him, "Get out of here, this guy is far beyond the Shinigami dimension." Idiot, it's too late. Hearing this, Dustless curled his lips in disdain, and increased the spiritual pressure in his body. Boom boom boom. The rookie Grim Reapers in the surroundings exploded one after another. Their bodies turned into a bloody mist, and they were directly crushed to death by the violent spiritual pressure. Only Rukia, Matsumoto Runju, and Hinamori were safe and sound. This was the result of Dustless deliberately going easy on them. TSK, using spiritual pressure to injure those rookies is nothing. Your opponent is me. Zaraki curled his lips in disdain and immediately ran again at an extremely fast speed. Boom boom boom. Zaraki didn't hesitate to take off his blindfold, and a vast amount of spiritual pressure began to erupt, and the Shinigami who were affected by it vomited blood. Who is this bastard helping? When the captains saw this, they cursed Zaraki Kenpachi and secretly scolded him. Idiot, I don't even need to fight with someone like you who only knows how to kill. Seeing this, Wu Chen sneered again and again. He stared at Zaraki, and a long-lost mysterious power in his body quietly erupted like a flash flood. His boundless might was not inferior to spiritual pressure. Unlike spiritual pressure, the moment his spiritual pressure erupted, the distorted space was instantly torn apart by the tyrannical power like a mirror. Ka ka ka. This aura fell on Zaraki's body. Zaraki's expression changed drastically, and he immediately began to slow down. He was like a tortoise crawling, and his whole body directly crushed the ground. What's this momentum? The captains looked at Dustless in disbelief, and it was difficult for them to breathe. Their bodies instantly became 100 times heavier, and it was extremely difficult for them to move. Zaraki was directly crushed by Dustless's momentum, and his whole body was half kneeling on the ground, sweating all over, and he could only look up at Dustless who was close at hand. It was impossible for him to move an inch, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of surrender in his heart. After the fusion of Haoshiku Haki and spiritual pressure, the power is naturally unprecedented. Seeing this scene, Dustless's performance was mediocre, and there was no sadness or joy. The so-called captains were a group of trash. Destroying them was not worth being proud of. Chapter 1079. Zaraki Kenpachi was aghast as he looked at Dustless, who was close at hand. He felt a huge sense of frustration in his heart. It was extremely difficult for him to make even an inch of progress. His entire body was bleeding. This huge deterrent suppressed him tightly, and it was 100 times more difficult than usual to breathe. Bastard. How is this possible? He has been a Shinigami for a year. How can his Ryatsu be so strong? Aizen stared at Dustless with unwillingness in his heart, and his eyes were dozens of times bigger than usual. Not only him, all the captain-level Shinigami looked extremely ugly, staring at Dustless with stunned eyes, and their faces turned red and white. Recalling Wu Chen's harsh words from before, their faces flushed red. "I'll give you both arms and legs." Even after half a day, this sentence was still in everyone's ears, like a thorn in everyone's heart. Looking at that thin body, everyone felt extremely incompetent. They were all captains, but there was a huge gap between them. This guy. No, I have to save them. Otherwise, the confidence of the captains will be crushed. Head Captain Yamamoto pulled out his Zanpakuto without hesitation, and the fire once again descended to the world, confronting Wuchen. The momentum of the two men each occupied half of the sky. Yamamoto's expression changed, and he released his Zanpakuto. All things in the world turned to ashes. Ryujin Jaka. Ryujin Jaka's body extended a blazing flame, and the power was extremely terrifying. Dozens of kilometers away, one could feel the restless Ryatsu of Old Man Yamamoto's body. Sure enough, if I don't use other abilities and only use the power of Shinigami, I'm afraid the one who will lose in the end will be me. Looking at Head Captain Yamamoto with an indifferent expression, Wu Chen had a clear understanding of his strength. Humph. With a grunt, Head Captain Yamamoto didn't appreciate it. He raised his hand and a powerful flame attack swept toward Wu Chen like a mountain pressing down on him. Fire-burning castle. In an instant, the sky around Dustless turned fiery red, and the surrounding air was impenetrable. The blazing flames formed a perfect wall of heat, trapping Dustless within. Phew! The flame barrier cut off Dustless's aura, and all the captains breathed a sigh of relief. The earth-shattering pressure also disappeared. These two fellows. If both of them can be seriously injured, that would be great. Aizen Sosuke's face was black as he clenched his fists. He never thought he would be so weak. Facing these two beasts, he wasn't their opponent. You guys should rest for a while. He can't break through the burning city wall. He actually walked out? How is this possible? Before Old Man Yamamoto's voice fell, Shuinsue's exclamation resounded. Dustless walked out of the flames as if nothing had happened, completely unscathed. You want to trap me with this kind of attack? Seems like the head captain likes to joke too. Dustless disdainfully curled his lips. His body was still emitting light, and his clothes were clean. Obviously, he didn't suffer any injuries. How is this possible? How did he do it? Yamamoto lost his calm, and his voice was trembling. Looking up, the flames from the burning city wall kept attacking Dustless, penetrating his body. Unfortunately, the effect was minimal. Dustless's body was flowing with golden light, and the damaged parts were repaired. His face wasn't red, and he wasn't out of breath. He was healthy and lively. That's not right. This guy just used the number 96 Heido, cremation. Isn't that a Heido sacrifice? How come he's also fine? Shunsui realized that something was wrong. These words stunned all the captains. Only then did they realize that Dustless was fine, and there were no traces of burns. Idiot, of course I'm fine. That's just a small injury. It's nothing. Hearing this, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. The Jubi's physique could repair all physical attacks. Scatter. Senbon Sakura. The sky was filled with cherry blossoms, thousands of them, almost covering the entire void. No matter what kind of monster you are, if you're attacked by countless blades at the same time, you can only turn into a skeleton in the end. Kumu Baya controlled thousands of cherry blossoms to attack. Everywhere they went, they were almost crushed into pieces. It was a mess. These beautiful cherry blossoms blotted out the sky, but in reality, every single one of them was a sharp blade. As long as one touched them, one would be scratched. The disastrous consequences of being attacked by hundreds of millions of blades at the same time were self-evident. Turn into a skeleton? Stop being so self-righteous. The spiritual pressure in his body was surging. Dustless didn't care. It was wishful thinking to think that such a flashy attack could hit him. Under the shocked gaze of all the captains, Dustless ignored the cherry blossoms in the sky. Instead, he was humming a horrifying tune. The cherry blossom blades cut Dustless's body back and forth, but it didn't have much effect. The elemental transformation directly repaired it. After a long time, they didn't even touch Dustless's body. On the other hand, Kumu Baya, who was controlling a large number of cherry blossoms, was panting from exhaustion. Everyone, attack together. This treacherous criminal must be captured today. A group of captains pounced on Dustless. Each of them displayed their skills. The sky was filled with the ability to annihilate Dustless. It's about time. Dustless suddenly laughed secretly. He turned a deaf ear to the various attacks around him. Any physical attack was repaired by the elemental transformation. At the same time, Dustless looked at his chest. There was a gem embedded there that was shining brightly. It was the Hogyoku. The endless release of spiritual pressure before was actually intentional. It was to awaken the Hogyoku. Now, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to test the effects of the Hogyoku. Chapter 1080. This is the characteristic of Hogyoku. Only by wasting all the Ryatsu in the body will the Hogyoku transfer its own Ryatsu to the host. Heido 88, Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. Wuxia didn't avoid the thick flash of light. He chose to fight back. Although the elemental transformation could ignore any physical attack, he didn't have that kind of special hobby of being hit by others. The Ryatsu in his body surged. Dustless opened his mouth slightly, and a huge flash whistled out. Heido 88, Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. The same Heido was released by different people. Naturally the power was different. The golden flash easily tore the blue light and destroyed it. How is this possible? They are all captains. How can the difference in strength be so big? The newly appointed captain of the 10th Division, Higashia Toshiro, said with an ugly face, and at the same time, he didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto. Bankai Udaigurin Hyarin Maru. The Ryatsu surged several times, and the atmosphere instantly condensed. Higashia Toshiro swung his Zanpakuto, and a cold light shot out, and the light was destroyed. Such a dangerous person, for the safety of Soul Society, we must suppress him. Higashia Toshiro said sternly. Dustless gave him too much pressure, like a captain-level Shinigami meeting a novice, he can only be crushed. For the safety of Soul Society? You captains are really great. I'm ashamed of myself. There was a ripple in the void. Dustless crossed the layers of the void, and in an instant, he subdued Higashia Toshiro, and the flash in his hand for a long time was blasted behind him. Laser! The straight flash slanted out, and under everyone's surprise, it penetrated Higashia Toshiro. Pucci! A huge scorched hole suddenly appeared on Higashia Toshiro's body. His pupils turned white, and he looked at the wound in disbelief, and fell to the ground unwillingly. Captain Higashia! The Shinigami shouted worriedly, and looked at Dustless with a particularly weak gaze. What kind of monster is this guy? Captain-level Shinigami are like children in front of him, he can kill them with a raise of his hand. Some of the novice Shinigami who were not afraid of death looked at Dustless standing in the void, and couldn't help but tremble, and some even wet their pants. You! Everyone, don't act rashly. Jingle Chuanshui's face was full of caution and gloominess. He gave a few glances to the other captains, indicating that they should besiege Dustless together and not fight him alone. However, no matter what, there is always a hothead. Oh, is this time you are the vanguard, Ai-kun? Higashia Toshiro. Duelist Shinigami Sun Level Shinigami. Toshiro Shinigami Shinigami Toshiro. Shinigami. He naturally heard Dustless's sarcasm and chose to retort. Captain Dustless, you said that you can defeat us without using your hands and feet, but it seems that you went back on your words. Dustless didn't deny it, but said meaningfully. Do you know what it means when a butcher picks up a gun to snipe his prey? Captain Ai-kun. Ai-kun was stunned when he saw Dustless's evil smile. He was thinking about Dustless's meaning. It means that he already thinks that it's time to kill his prey, so he won't hold back.
After that, Dustless turned into a storm and rushed towards Aizen Sosuke. Due to his terrifying Ryatsu, a large amount of golden light condensed behind him and rushed towards Aizen Sosuke. Dustless's every step distorted the void with his rhythm. He didn't need to use any technique, he just used his Ryatsu to suppress Aikuen. Is this guy crazy? He'll be finished if he uses up his Ryatsu. All the captains were dumbfounded as they looked at the sky that had been dyed gold. They all breathed their last with a gulp sound. This kind of desperate play had shocked everyone. Humph. This speed is just oh. Soi Feng, the captain of the second division, let out a muffled groan. She leaped into the air and leaped into the air. I actually lost to him in what I'm best at. Aikuen's face was pale as his expression changed. He twitched from time to time as he saw Dustless's Ryatsu. His self-esteem was shattered. Aikuen had always been proud of his Ryatsu, but Dustless's appearance mercilessly shattered his pride. Moreover, Dustless's time as a Shinigami was far less than Aikuen's. It was only a year. Aikuen had been a Shinigami for hundreds of years, but his efforts couldn't compare to Dustless's in a single year. He almost vomited blood as he suddenly realized that he had been living like a pig for hundreds of years. Hado's 91,000 hands bright sky cannon. Countless streaks of pink light swept out from the palm of his hand and shot towards Dustless in a destructive manner. Naive. Dustless's body glowed faintly as he used his elemental transformation to dodge the attack. He increased his Ryatsu and was about to rush towards Aikuen with even more ferocity when a delicate figure blocked Dustless's path. So. The black figure rushed over and appeared in front of Dustless in the blink of an eye. Her speed wasn't any slower than Dustless's as she punched towards Dustless. You're still too slow compared to me. Soi Feng coldly stared at Dustless. Seeing that he wasn't moved, she increased her strength by 30%. Smiling contemptuously, Wu Chen said disdainfully, You're fast but your power is too weak. Dustless didn't even use his elemental transformation. He casually grabbed the incoming fist and threw Soi Feng to the horizon. Chapter 1081. The powerful force made it hard for Soi Feng to even stop her body. It was as if she was hit by a 10,000-ton meteorite. She was thrown hundreds of meters away before she could regain her balance. Monster. It must be a monster. Soi Feng took a deep breath to calm her emotions. Her gaze also changed from looking straight up to looking up. Idiot. I told you to attack together. Don't act rashly, or we will be defeated by this monster one by one. Shun Sui looked around and warned. When he saw the remaining members on his side, he frowned. After fighting for so long, we are the only ones who keep losing people. That guy is still safe. Dustless held the Zanpakuto's hilt tightly and looked up at the sky like a god looking down on all living things. Byakuya was unwilling to give up. The gap between the two sides was too big, so big that it made them feel hopeless. This Shinigami who had only been a Shinigami for 1 year had surpassed their hundreds of years of hard work. Shun Sui tried to persuade Byakuya. Captain Byakuya, don't be so pessimistic. Don't forget that this is Soul Society, the headquarters of the Shinigami. As soon as his voice fell, Shun Sui wished he could give himself a slap. The surrounding reapers that were instantly killed were clearly visible. Just now, Dustless had only relied on his own aura and had effortlessly injured all the reapers. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a golden light swept across the sky and dyed the sky golden. The warm light fell from the sky, and it was completely different from the gentle sun. It was filled with destructive energy waves. Enchanting, Sparrow Bee Lightning Whip. Thousands of golden light converged on Soi Feng's arm like a black hole. It was a giant sparrow bee, and it looked like the tail of a queen bee. This exaggerated enchanting is the opposite of assassination. Dustless turned to look at Soi Feng. Sensing the sharpness of the golden weapon, the first thing he thought of was the nuclear bomb in his previous life. It looks good on the surface, but I don't know how powerful it is. Soi Feng's expression turned serious and she said, You will understand soon. She mobilized the remaining spiritual pressure in her body and gathered it on her right arm. Buzz buzz buzz. The metal weapon that looked like a missile buzzed and emitted a dazzling glow under the sunlight. Disappear. The metal's mysterious bankai had clearly reached its limit. Xiaofan let out a loud roar as the huge bankai wrapped around her arm ignited in flames and shot out like a missile. Large weapons were particularly cumbersome, but their speed was surprisingly fast. In the blink of an eye, they were gone, leaving only a smoky afterimage in the clear sky. TSK. To think that we were looking forward to it. It turns out to be such a boring Bankai. Dustless curled his lips in disappointment and lost all interest. Spiritual pressure gathered at the tip of the blade. It was sparkling, translucent, and filled with beauty. As he raised his hand, a long and narrow crescent moonlight appeared. Boom, boom, boom. The biting cold slash tore apart the metal weapon, splitting it in half before exploding. The blazing heat wave could be felt from several kilometers away. Swish! Swish! The cold light suddenly appeared, as fast as lightning. Wu Chen could only catch an inconspicuous black dot. "That's fast, Captain Xiaofan," Dustless said when he felt a slight movement in the space behind him. "I've already said that I'm best at speed." A gust of cold wind blew, and Xiaofan approached Dustless without him noticing. Her small weapon was pressed against Dustless's throat. "Is that so?" Dustless could not deny this point. He then said coldly, "However, I've already said that your speed is not bad, but your strength is not worth mentioning." His left eye spun rapidly, and a purple light flashed in the depths of his eye. An irresistible and intangible power spread out. Shinra Tensei. As if she had been punched in the face, Xiaofan was sent flying again. Like a willow branch swaying in the wind, she could not retaliate at all. Dustless took a step forward and was about to give Xiaofan a fatal blow, but the eyesore of cherry blossom suddenly appeared and formed a sea of flowers, blocking Dustless's path. "Don't treat us like air." Shun Sui and Byakuya flew into the air and glared at Dustless. The only ones left in the Godii 13 were Shun Sui Kaiokura, Byakuya Aizen, and Yamamoto Yamamoto. The remaining captains had all lost their ability to fight. "In just a few exchanges, we've lost more than half of our captains, and this guy's expression is normal, and his spiritual pressure is not showing any signs of drying up. Ridiculous. We can't even be used as cannon fodder," Shun Sui said gloomily. This was the first time they, as captains, had been defeated so mercilessly. "No need to be sad, just thank me. The rest of you are about to fall asleep on the ground." Sensing that there was not much spiritual pressure left in his body, Dustless took a step forward. His speed was beyond imagination, and he crossed 1,000 meters in a single step. The tip of the Kusanagi sword descended from the sky and slashed at Shun Sui's head. Shun Sui was shocked. Before the sword arrived, he felt an unprecedented aura of death. His whole body was cold, and he quickly thought of a countermeasure. Realizing that there was nothing he could do, he retreated unwillingly. It's not that Shun Sui was timid, but he didn't want to make a meaningless sacrifice. This ordinary sword could easily cut down a grand virtual like Vasto Lord. When one's strength reached Dustless's level, it was like this. Even if it was the most insignificant attack, the destruction created was also world-shocking. Dustless secretly laughed, and his body instantly disappeared without a trace. "Captain Shun Sui, behind you!" Shun Sui was shocked when he heard this, and his pupils widened. He turned his head and looked at Dustless, who was holding his Zanpakuto high. He was obviously prepared for this. This guy can actually read my movements? Can he predict the future? Chapter 1082. Shun Sui was shocked speechless. He never thought that the enemy could be as troublesome as Dustless. His strength was perfect. He could easily use destructive attacks, and at the same time he could dodge any perfect sneak attack. Not only that, the mysterious purple eyes now seemed to be able to see the future, read people's hearts, and react in advance. Pucci! Scorching sword wounds spread all over his back. The Kusanagi sword ruthlessly slashed out, easily injuring Shun Sui. His body instantly lost its support point and began to shake. "You bastard!" He turned around with difficulty, gritted his teeth to maintain his balance, and used all his strength to penetrate Dustless. Good chance. Seeing Dustless motionless like a statue, Shun Sui's strength in his hand increased by 30%. Pucci! Jingle Shun Sui's hopes were dashed and turned into a bubble. What replaced it was a dumbfounded expression. The saber light pierced through Wu Chen's head, but the same scene happened again. The wound glowed with a warm luster and was instantly healed.
Goodbye, Captain Shun Sui. Dustless's expression was cold. Light suddenly appeared under his feet, and mercilessly kicked Shun Sui with all his strength. Light speed kick. Since they had shed all pretense of cordiality, Dustless naturally wouldn't show mercy to this group of captains. Boom boom boom. There was a loud rumbling sound in the sky. Shun Sui finally couldn't maintain his body, and threw away the Zanpakuto in his hand. His charred body was still emitting visible black smoke, and Aizen and Byakuya watched in surprise. Boom! Shuinsui's body slammed heavily on the ground. His face was unrecognizable. His hair was burned bald, and he looked very sloppy. Captain Shun Sui. Keiki Byakuya's heart couldn't help but sink as he looked at Aizen Sosuke. Seeing that he showed no signs of joining forces and that his mind was wandering, Keiki Byakuya could only sit there like a trapped beast. After a few breaths, the sky was shrouded in a pink halo. The petals all over the sky danced above Dustless's head. The scenery was beautiful, and being in a sea of flowers made people involuntarily let down their guard. It's a pity, I was born a vulgar person, such a beautiful scenery, but I don't feel anything instead. I find it very annoying. Dustless looked up indifferently, and destructive energy fluctuations gathered at his fingertips. Yasakani no Magatama. Golden light flashed, and the power was extremely strong. There were more than tens of thousands of them, and they rushed into the sea of flowers in a tough manner, creating a large vacuum area. There were many light bullets formed by the Yasakani no Magatama, but in terms of quantity, these flower petals were superior. It was as if they could split. Not only did they not decrease, but they also increased as Kumu Baya's spiritual pressure increased. Finally, they formed a circle and surrounded Dustless. It's time. After a long while, Byakuyas. Senbon Banzakura Senbon Akura. The floating petals around Dustless immediately gathered. Clearly, they were guided by Kuchiki Baya and turned into a large petal sphere hanging in the sky. An all-around attack with no blind spots? Dustless's low cry came from inside the giant sphere formed by pink petals. Looking around, countless petals tore at his body, and their sharpness was even sharper than a steel knife. It's this kind of thing over and over again. It's so boring. He casually grabbed a petal, but the texture was extremely strange. It was as hard as steel. Wither! With a slight force from his fingertips, Dustless's expression turned cold, and a black sphere immediately appeared behind him, its size constantly increasing in size. Ka. The moment this unassuming black sphere came into contact with the Senbonzakura petals, the blooming petals all collapsed, as if they had never existed, and disappeared without a trace. What is that? Byakuya was shocked. Inside the sphere formed by the petals, the huge black sphere expanded without limit, and all the petals that came into contact with it turned into nothingness. Dustless stood in it as if nothing had happened, yawning in boredom, and looked drowsy. Seeing this scene, Byakuya felt as if a sharp thorn had pierced into his heart. The pain was unbearable, and his self-esteem was trampled by Dustless. In the blink of an eye, one of Byakuya's strongest moves that he trusted collapsed. Don't put on such an incredulous expression. Using the truth-seeking ball to deal with this kind of thing is already giving you face, Dustless said indifferently as he looked at the absent-minded Byakuya. Huff! Suppressing his fluctuating heart, Byakuya raised his Zanpakuto, and countless petals fluttered again. The only difference was that they all gathered on both sides of his body. Final scene. White Sword Emperor. The dazzling white light on both sides turned from nothingness to reality, as if they were flapping their wings, and a supreme sword will came head-on. Dustless curled his lips in disdain when he saw this. He deeply despised such flashy moves and sneered, "These fancy moves are the true portrayal of you, incompetent." After saying that, Dustless did not wait for Byakuya to attack, and the remaining spiritual pressure in his body locked onto him, turning into countless black lights that devoured him. 90 of the Broken Path. Black Coffin. A deep black luster came from all directions, and although Byakuya noticed it immediately, just as he was about to dodge, 6 golden ribbons of light restrained his movements. 61 of the Bakudo. 6-rod light prison. Realizing that his body could not move, Byakuya's face suddenly collapsed, and his eyes changed back and forth. The light on both wings flapped, and then countless white lights whizzed out, trying to stop the invasion of the black lights. Ka. The black lights that came from all directions were successfully dispersed, turning into scattered spiritual particles that floated away.
Byakuya heaved a sigh of relief, and just as he was about to use all his strength to deal with Dustless, a golden light whizzed over. The sharpness of the Kusanagi sword pierced through Byakuya.
Chapter 1083. Head Captain Yamamoto, who was watching from the ground, felt dizzy. His old face, which looked like dead tree bark, trembled, and his drooping long beard stood straight up. The Godii 13 that he had painstakingly trained couldn't even withstand a single blow. They were all defeated in a few moves. Now the only one left in the sky was Sosuke Aizen, who was facing Dustless. Heido number 88. Flying Dragon Strikes Thief. A flash of light shot up from the ground and locked onto Dustless in the sky. Yamamoto was the initiator of this attack. The Heido released by Yamamoto was naturally powerful. The thick beam of light made it hard for people to look at it directly. If they looked at it directly, their eyes would be dazzled, and they wouldn't be able to see anything clearly. My Ryatsu is almost used up. Dustless sighed when he sensed that there wasn't much Ryatsu left. Dustless glanced at the beam of light and used the last of his Ryatsu to counterattack. Bakudo number 81. Skybreaker. A transparent barrier appeared under Dustless's feet, blocking the impact of the 88 Heido. Boom boom boom. The light swept over, and the barrier shook violently. The barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing and should have been easily broken was surprisingly easy to break. After a short stalemate, the light was extinguished. The thick beam of light was also gradually extinguished. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yamamoto couldn't wait any longer and jumped in front of Dustless. He looked around and saw that only he and Sosuke Aizen were left. The rest of the Godii 13 had been wiped out. Captain Dustless's Ryatsu seems to have run out. Are you still planning to resist? Aizen's sharp eyes noticed that Dustless's Ryatsu had run out, and his tense nerves relaxed. He smiled and said, "Surrender. Maybe the captain will be merciful and let you go." Yamamoto was silent. His murderous intent gathered in his murky eyes. Wherever he looked, there was only silence. You're right. As a Shinigami, my Ryatsu has indeed run out. Dustless didn't deny it. It was the truth. He's actually laughing? Is there something wrong with his head? Aizen scolded Sosuke in his heart. He was observant and he clearly saw the smile on Dustless's face. He didn't know why, but Aizen felt a chill down his spine. The spiritual pressure of the Grim Reaper has already reached the bottom? What do you mean by that? Could it be that you have the spiritual pressure of a void? Don't be so quick with your words. Yamamoto frowned and coldly snorted. This old man advises you to put down the sword in your hand immediately. The power of Ryujin Jaka is too strong. It will be difficult to save your life. Wu Chen smiled slightly when he heard that. These words were arrogant, but it was the truth. His face was incomparably dark, and his eyes were squinted. At this moment, Dustless was exceptionally terrifying and sinister. He smiled and said, "Sir Head Captain is indeed wise. Other than the spiritual pressure of the Grim Reaper, I do indeed have the spiritual pressure of the void." As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless's chest began to emit a milky white high-density spiritual pressure. Ka-ka-ka! His shirt instantly burst open, revealing his clean skin. His skin was as white as snow without any impurities. However, Yamamoto and Aizen's eyes were focused on the purple pearl embedded in Dustless's abdomen. At this moment, it was emitting a mysterious halo and endlessly transmitting spiritual pressure. The dried-up spiritual pressure in Dustless's body was filled to the brim in almost less than a second. This is Hogyoku. Yamamoto and Aizen Sosuke were shocked. They said the name of the mysterious sphere in unison. Their hearts were in their throats. If East Deity didn't say that Hogyoku was destroyed, how could it have fallen into his hands? Head Captain Yamamoto said with a pale face. He almost vomited blood when he sensed that Wuchen's Ryatsu had recovered instantly. I don't know. Aizen's face was also pale. He was sure that East Senpai didn't lie to him. The density of the Hogyoku embedded in Dustless's chest was extremely high. It was dozens of times higher than the one he made himself. Confused? That's right. The Hogyoku continued to erupt spiritual pressure, and Dustless's body gradually changed. A layer of milky white halo covered his entire body.
His entire body was wrapped in a high-density spiritual pressure. I just used some small genjutsu to make East Senpai think that I destroyed the Hogyoku. In fact, that's not the case. The Hogyoku is such a heaven-defying object. Why would I destroy it? Dustless said with a smile. Looking at Captain Yamamoto and Aizen's expressions, it was as if they had eaten 10 pounds of flies. Dustless felt particularly happy. In fact, Urahara Kisuke also made a Hogyoku, and I took it. Together with the Hogyoku that East Senpai wanted, there were a total of 2. But now, I merged them into one Hogyoku. Yamamoto was startled when he heard this. He sensed that something was wrong and asked, "Impossible, you didn't leave Soul Society, and it's impossible for you to go to the modern world. The modern world is also monitored by Soul Society's Shinigami." No! Yamamoto suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed drastically. Did you use the gap in Hueco Mundo to go to the modern world to find Urahara Kisuke? You took the opportunity to steal his Hogyoku? Dustless shrugged and nodded, saying with a smile, "Sir Head Captain's analysis is reasonable." Puff! Yamamoto's body trembled, and he almost fell down. He was the one who approved Dustless's expedition to Hueco Mundo, but now it seemed that he had shot himself in the foot. Don't let this old guy die of anger. Aizen looked at the trembling Yamamoto, and a rare touch of pity rose in his heart. He was sure that if he attacked Yamamoto now, he would be able to kill him in one blow. However, the serious situation made Aizen let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After Yamamoto died, he would have to face Dustless alone. He would die without a doubt. Chapter 1084. Looking at Dustless's attitude, Aizen was happy. Through Dustless's words, he knew how to create a perfect Hogyoku. So that's how it is. Merging with Urahara Kisuke's Hogyoku can create a perfect Hogyoku. Thousands of doubts disappeared, and the puzzle in his heart disappeared with the wind. Aizen was very relaxed, and his face was full of joy. Dustless smiled and didn't say anything. Dustless felt the Ryatsu in his body, and his eyes were cold. Aizen and Yamamoto could test the effect of the Hogyoku. I also want to see how good the Hogyoku is. Aizen's eyes were like torches, and his Ryatsu surged. His Ryatsu was stronger than all the captains, causing Yamamoto to frown. Yamamoto looked at Aizen with a different expression. He didn't expect this gentle captain to have such a strong Ryatsu. No one in the Gotei 13 could compete with him. Aizen pointed his thumb to the sky and began to chant, faintly revealing the turbid emblem, the ability to be unruly and arrogant. Tide negation, paralysis, for a moment. Know your own powerlessness. Heido 90, Black Coffin. After he finished his chant, Sosuke Aizen revealed a cold smile. He suddenly looked at the sky, and countless sharp black lights poured down, decorating the demonic afterglow. It could tear a human's body to pieces. My black coffin can easily kill a grand void like Vasto Lord. Even if you've fused with Hogyoku, it won't be easy for you to get hit. Aizen laughed inside, full of pride. For hundreds of years, he worked hard to improve his strength. His strength was far beyond the other captains of the Gotei 13. Such a boring attack. Are you kidding me? The cold words made Aizen's mouth twitch. He sneered. Is that so? I hope you won't be torn apart by this trick. Dustless was silent, and he closed his eyes. At the same time, the huge black coffin wrapped around him. Puchi! 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 The interior of the black coffin was sinister and decaying. Countless black blades slashed at the same time. There was only one target. Dustless. Tens of thousands of blades attacked him at the same time. Dustless didn't dodge or evade. He didn't use his elemental transformation, nor did he use his divinity. He just stood there quietly, bathed in the thousands of cold light attacks. The moment the black blades came into contact with Dustless's body, they all collapsed and shattered. The high-density white spiritual pressure covering Dustless's skin was similar to Void's steel skin, but its hardness was completely different. In this state, Dustless had completely transcended the dimension of Shinigami and Hollow. Aizen Sosuke was delusional to think that he could hurt Dustless in a higher dimension. Therefore, there was no need to dodge at all. The black coffin had no effect on Dustless. It didn't even tickle him.
At least, it could make Dustless feel that someone was touching him. While being attacked by the black coffin, he didn't feel anything at all. It was as if nothing was there. It was just that the sky darkened. Let's stop here. Looking around, Dustless saw that the blades had stopped. He waved his hand, and a violent hurricane roared out. Ka ka ka. The moment the hurricane came out of Dustless's hand, it was magnified hundreds of times, and its power was also the same. It instantly destroyed the black coffin, and the sky became clear again. He's not injured at all. How is this possible? Seeing that Dustless was fine, Aizen Sosuke was stunned. His hand holding the Zanpakuto trembled, and his Kyoka Suigetsu almost fell down. He looked at Dustless as if he saw a ghost. He clearly heard the ka-ka-ka sound coming from inside the black coffin. Yamamoto was silent, but from his trembling lips, it wasn't difficult to see that his heart was also in turmoil. This guy didn't make any evasive moves, and he didn't use any tricks. He just relied on the hardness of his body to withstand the attack of Heido 90. Head Captain Yamamoto, who had sharp eyes, instantly saw through the trick. Yamamoto's face was gloomy, and he suddenly wished that he didn't understand anything. Sometimes, knowing the truth made him feel heavier than ever. Dustless's white steel skin was enough to easily defend against any attack. For the time being, Aizen was still in the Shinigami's dimension. It was tantamount to a fantasy for him to cause any substantial damage to Dustless. Any of his physical attacks, Dustless didn't need to defend. The gap is too big, your attacks don't work on me at all. Dustless glanced at Aizen and said in a low voice. His tone was full of disdain. He looked at Aizen as if he was looking at an ant. You! Hearing this, Aizen's old face turned green. He was always the one who treated others like ants, but this time, he and Dustless switched positions. What's worse, this was an undeniable fact. He didn't waste time talking nonsense with Aizen. He gently raised his thumb, and a huge golden light appeared. What a strong power, what level of Heido is this? Staring at the flash condensed by Wu Chen, Head Captain Yamamoto speculated. The sharpness of this energy ball was beyond any Dao breaker he had ever known. The small ball was only the size of a palm, but it dyed the sky within tens of kilometers of Soul Society golden. No, it doesn't seem to be Heido. Noticing the strange Ryatsu in Dustless's body, Aizen was keenly aware of a bloodthirsty wild wave that wanted to destroy everything in the world. It was extremely evil. This seems to be Void Flash. Chapter 1085. Aizen was very excited. Dustless's combat power was far beyond his expectations. When he completes his Hogyoku, he will reach the same level as Dustless. A flash of light appeared, and the shadow of death covered Aizen Sosuke. His impassioned heart vanished. Being targeted by the flash, Aizen Sosuke instinctively hid behind Head Captain Yamamoto. This exaggerated golden void flash refreshed Aizen and Yamamoto's understanding. Buzz, Dustless kept transferring Ryatsu to Void Flash, and the Void Flash reached a qualitative change. After the dazzling light, it reached its limit and made a series of roars. Whoosh! Dustless glanced at Aizen, Yamamoto Motosuke, and Willow Chiguni without the slightest emotion. Dustless flicked out Void Flash. Kakaka! The golden light flashed and disappeared. They couldn't see what it looked like. They could only see a thick beam of light that exploded along the way. This level of Void Flash, Yamamoto's face sank. He gave up on the idea of using Bakudo. It would only be embarrassing. Ha! With a low shout, Ryujin Jaka spewed out a flame that gathered on the blade. The temperature was so hot that Dustless, who was hundreds of meters away, trembled. This old guy. As expected of someone who could defeat someone like Yawatch. He deserves the title of the strongest Shinigami. Dustless nodded after seeing the sharpness of Ryujin Jaka's blade. This was just the beginning. After a while, Ryujin Jaka's blade showed an even stranger scene. The flames around Ryujin Jaka's blade were all compressed into the blade. What's going on? The Ryatsu didn't change, and it's not Bankai. Dustless thought to himself. He stared at Yamamoto's next move with anticipation. The stronger the enemy, the better. It would be best if he could feel the danger of death, so that he could use the power of the Hogyoku to evolve. At the same time, under the gaze of Dustless and Aizen,
Yamamoto's long hair fluttered in the wind. He stared at the incoming light without fear and calmly raised Ryujin Jaka. As Void Flash approached, Head Captain Yamamoto swung his Zanpakuto. Boom boom boom. The moment it hit Void Flash, the dry body of Flowing Edge Jaka's blade suddenly erupted with a terrifying amount of explosive flames. It was so hot that even the sky was melting and peeling off layer by layer. Before Void Flash could explode, it was burned by the flames released by Flowing Jaka and disappeared without a trace. I see. Seeing this scene, Dustless was relieved. He suddenly remembered that the Ryujin Jaka was a sword of fire, capable of erasing everything it touched. Sealing all the flames into the Zanpakuto, once it is swung, everything will be over, and everything will be burned to ashes. This is the horror of Ryujin Jaka. Everything it touches will be turned to ashes. This is interesting. The stronger you are, the happier I will be. Dustless was overjoyed when he saw this. The Hogyoku was like this. If he wanted to improve, he must have a strong opponent. Good opportunity. You dare to be distracted while fighting with the head captain, you're amazing. Seeing Dustless was distracted, Aizen admired him from the bottom of his heart. Normal people would be 120% alert when facing the head captain. Only Dustless dared to be so daring. Then, under the head captain's confused gaze, Aizen stood in front of Dustless. You traitor, the head captain is a kind person, and you owe him a lot, but in the end, you betrayed Soul Society and turned against the Shinigami, shameless. Aizen Sosuke was the first to accuse him of evil. Come here. Ant. Dustless glanced at Aizen and curled his finger. He didn't even bother to call him by his name. You bastard. Hearing this, Aizen Sosuke's face turned red. He gritted his teeth and roared. It was ironic to be called an ant in such a big way. Sosuke Aizen's pride was shattered into pieces. If he wanted to heal it, he'd have to kill Dustless. In that case, let's try the strength of an ant. Spiritual pressure surged like a waterfall. Aizen's palm flashed with countless lights. Heido 91. Thousand Hands Bright Sky Cannon. A large number of pink lights shot out. The number of them was enough to make people despair. The momentum was spectacular. They all rushed towards Dustless. Boom boom boom. The dense light all hit Dustless, splashing a huge aftershock. The destructive impact extended to the distant sky. Countless flashes caused a series of explosions. In just a few minutes, the void where Dustless was standing was filled with violent explosions. Dustless's indifferent eyes looked straight ahead, surrounded by a sea of fire, but he didn't react at all. He was just looking for Aizen's trace. He completely ignored the pink light that hit his body. Where did that sneaky guy go? Dustless couldn't help but murmur. After searching for a long time, he couldn't find any trace of Aizen. When he was about to use his observation hockey to look for Aizen, a sharp light came from behind him. Go to hell! Aizen, holding Kyoka Suigetsu, fell from the sky. His spiritual pressure was pushed to the limit, and his Zanpakuto slashed towards Dustless. Crack! A crisp sound suddenly came. Aizen thought that Dustless's head would be separated, but who would have thought that his Zanpakuto would be chipped? On the other hand, Dustless was safe and sound. The Ryatsu outside his body was enough to ignore all physical attacks. Chapter 1086. Aizen Sosuke looked at the cracked Zanpakuto in disbelief. He was so shocked that his jaw almost dislocated. He used Kyoka Suigetsu to attack someone else. Dustless himself was fine, but his Kyoka Suigetsu was cracked. One could imagine how shocked he was. You're still far from being able to stand on this stage. Raising his eyebrows, Dustless, who was still in the Hogyoku cradle state, stepped forward and heavily injured Aizen Sosuke, sending him straight to hell. Puchi! The hot Zanpakuto heavily injured Aizen Sosuke and opened a giant hole in his chest. Not only that, Dustless pulled out his Kusanagi sword and kicked Aizen Sosuke away. A pink disc of flames flew out. Heido 54. Flame Destruction. The pink flame disc penetrated Aizen Sosuke's body before he could even react. Puchi! Bright red blood spurted into the air and an arm fell to the ground. You bastard! I'll kill you! Aizen Sosuke looked up and saw that Dustless cut his left arm. If Aizen Sosuke didn't dodge in time, he would have been cut in half. Go to hell! He glanced at Aizen Sosuke indifferently.
His golden flash roared and approached Aizen Sosuke in an instant. However, a figure blocked Aizen Sosuke's path in time. He waved his Zanpakuto and dissolved the golden flash. Boom boom boom. The blazing flames incinerated Void Flash. Old man Yamamoto stood in front of Aizen Sosuke. He was the one who had saved Sosuke's life at the last moment. If this old man knew that Aizen Sosuke betrayed Soul Society and almost killed him, wouldn't he be so depressed that he vomited blood? Ignoring old man Yamamoto's gaze, he raised his Kusanpakuto again. A huge golden light gathered at the tip of the sword. So. The terrifying luster of destruction almost filled the entire sky of Soul Society, and the entire sky was replaced by this terrifying and biting cold light. This guy is too dangerous. Seeing this, Yamamoto didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto. Bankai. Zanpakuto Tachi. As the vigorous and old voice fell, the flowing-edged jaka was instantly charred, giving off a wisp of hot steam. The captain actually used Bankai. Aizen Sosuke, who was hiding behind Yamamoto, was shocked. He stared at the burnt Zanpakuto. He could clearly feel that the water in Soul Society was slowly evaporating. Water was the source of all things. Once it was completely lost, it was self-evident what it meant. The collapse of Soul Society was close at hand. A powerful aura of destruction gathered at the tip of the blade. Head Captain Yamamoto stared at the huge attack coming at him. In the end, a huge blade aura swept out from the tip of the blade. Zanpakuto Tachi. Heaven and Earth. Sosuke's Zanpakuto make contact with Dustless's Zanpakuto. Zanpakuto Tachi didn't even explode. The explosion, the Zanpakuto Tachi was directly shredded. Not even the slightest trace was left. Sosuke's handsome face was almost distorted, looking at his broken left arm and the hole in his chest. If he hadn't gone through hundreds of years of training, he would have died already. Sosuke clenched his fists. His face was full of unwillingness. He thought that even without the Hogyoku, his strength was not much different from the captain's, but this situation was far beyond his imagination. What a powerful power! Dustless's pupils shrank as he was envious. He immediately saw the hot Zanpakuto Tachi sweeping towards him. He didn't even have time to react before the Zanpakuto Tachi swallowed him. Puchi! The invincible defensive Ryatsu coat was shattered easily like an eggshell. The left half of Wu Chen's body was also erased directly. This should be the end of it. Yamamoto breathed a sigh of relief. However, Dustless's next sentence sent him to hell. End? Are you kidding me? You want to kill me? Dream on. With a contemptuous smile, Dustless's left body began to slowly recover. The Jubi is immortal. All injuries can be healed. Zanpakuto Tachi. Noticing the evaporation of Soul Society and the abnormality of Ryujin Jaka, Dustless immediately understood that old man Yamamoto released his Zanpakuto. However, at this moment, the Hogyoku in his body burst out with a high density of Ryatsu again. Hogyoku? Is this evolution? It shouldn't be. Only when the host feels the danger of death or has emotions like fear can it evolve. Dustless frowned as he noticed the abnormality of the Hogyoku in his body. Although he was seriously injured, it didn't affect him much, let alone feeling the fear of death, so evolution was nonsense. And this eruption of Ryatsu was far more than before. There was a qualitative change, like an endless ocean. Dustless is the Jubi, his body is strong enough, otherwise, he will definitely explode. Unprecedented terrifying Ryatsu floated all over his body, and the storm produced directly forced Yamamoto to retreat. Just when Dustless was about to go all out and sweep the entire Soul Society into the garbage dump of history, a huge Tianju chariot suddenly flashed in the sky, and several unfamiliar figures jumped down. Among them, there were two women that Dustless knew. So it's Team Zero, you came at the right time. I don't need to find a way to kill my way to the Spirit King Palace. The Ryatsu armor covering his face broke again, revealing Dustless's cold face, and his pupils changed, emitting a strange luster. Just now, he received the Hogyoku's Ryatsu and evolved again. Chapter 1087. The people who suddenly appeared were all wearing the same uniform, all captains Haori, and the badge behind them were also the same. Several members of Team Zero were all present, Hattori Department's Ishii, Nyamiya's Wang Yu, Kirin Temple's Tenshiro,
as well as Dustless's acquaintances, Shotaro Senju Maru and Seo Toshio. Ah! You were forced to use Bankai. You're really embarrassed, Genrise. Kirin Temple's Tenshiro stood up and said sarcastically. It sounded like he was mocking Yamamoto, but in fact, he was looking at Dustless from the corner of his eyes. In the end, his face was completely gloomy. The two of them mentioned you before. I thought you would be loyal to Soul Society, but now your performance is too disappointing. We even tried to recruit you into Team Zero. Why did you betray Shinigami? Why did you betray Soul Society? Why did you betray Soul Lord? Hattori Department's Ishii gritted his teeth and said, almost roaring in the end. Dustless looked at Shotaro Senju Maru's slightly complicated face, the killing intent on his face disappeared, and his indifferent voice softened a little. With an apologetic tone he said, I'm sorry. As Dustless's spiritual pressure was extinguished, so was Yamamoto's. The scene stopped for a while, and Soul Society, which was being crushed by spiritual pressure, finally returned to a temporary calm. Soul Society has been good to you, and we didn't do anything wrong to you. Why did you do this? Shotaro Senju Maru asked. She was the one who tried to recruit Dustless into Team Zero. Looking around at the fallen Shinigami, and all the captains who were killed, Shotaro Senju Maru's eyes flashed with surprise, and said angrily, now you actually annihilated all the Shinigami. Seeing this, the members of Team Zero showed murderous intent, and at the same time, they were secretly surprised by Dustless's combat power. Looking at old man Yamamoto's tired appearance, they all looked solemn. There is no doubt that the combat power of Team Zero is higher than the entire Godai 13, but that's if all the members of Team Zero are combined. Whether they can beat old man Yamamoto one-on-one is still a question. Looking at the situation now, old man Yamamoto was forced to use Bankai. His opponent didn't even use his Zanpakuto. I've said it before, I don't want to be enemies with the Grim Reaper. Dustless shook his head and reiterated once again. I don't want to be enemies with the Grim Reaper. I also don't want to kill the Spirit King. Whether he lives or dies has nothing to do with me. My only goal is to strip the Spirit King of his title and replace him with me in the end. Wu Chen said softly, as if it was a trivial matter. He was very calm and relaxed. These deranged words stunned everyone. Only head Captain Yamamoto and a few members of Squad Zero heard it. As for Sosuke Aizen, he was seriously injured by Dustless and is now unconscious. Do you even understand what you are saying? Do you know what Spirit King means to Soul Society? Lord Spirit King's existence symbolizes the existence of the entire world. If the Spirit King were to disappear, everything would vanish into thin air. Wang Yu, who had the title of Knife God, said angrily. The Spirit King was finished. Everything would turn into a bubble. You're called the God of Broadswords. It seems that you don't live up to your name. After all, you're just an ordinary man with shallow knowledge. Glancing at Wang Yu, Dustless simply ignored him and explained. Spirit King is the chisel of everything. It can even be said that he's the cornerstone of the world. But he's also the Grim Reaper's biggest weakness. Hearing this, the members of Squad Zero couldn't help but stagnate. They confessed to Dustless's words. Because they have to protect the Spirit King, the Grim Reaper wants to be restrained. Dealing with all enemies is based on protecting the Spirit King. And the Spirit King himself has no fighting power. He's a burden to Squad Zero. After all, they have to constantly protect the Spirit King, so they can't get away. If I become the Spirit King, I don't need to say it. You know what it means. The corner of his mouth raised. Dustless smiled and said bewitchingly. Your Squad Zero can get rid of the restraints and have no worries. You can use all your strength to deal with Yawatch. You even know about Yawatch. The members of Squad Zero were stunned. They all lowered their heads at the same time. Their eyes flickered. If there's no Spirit King, their Squad Zero and the Grim Reaper of Soul Society can use all their strength to deal with their comrade Yawatch. This is an undeniable advantage. And it's not difficult to see that Dustless himself has a strong fighting power. Humph, the Spirit King is built to stabilize the soul. You think you can replace him just because you say so? Sayaso sneered. Looking at Dustless's face, she suddenly remembered that she was molested by Dustless. She suddenly became angry. Don't say no. Even if you can, if you want to be the Spirit King, I'll be the first to disagree. A woman's view. She glanced at Zhou Tongsheng, and Wu Chen knew that she wanted to take revenge.
To be honest, he didn't want to make things difficult for the Grim Reaper. However, Dustless is not the kind of person who is born to be someone's subordinate, even if it's the Spirit King. Dustless just wants to become the Spirit King and seize his power. In a sense, the Spirit King is a collection of souls. Its role is even greater than the Hogyoku. Soul Society is a place where Ryatsu is used. What determines the amount of Ryatsu is a person's soul. It seems that there is no room for negotiation. Looking at the members of Squad Zero and Head Captain Yamamoto, Dustless saw that they were indifferent and unmoved. Dustless understood that wasting half a day of words before will not have any effect. The vigorous Ryatsu in his body surged again. Just as he was about to kill them, a sudden change occurred. Dustless's pupils shrank. He stared at the Hogyoku in his body. He was keenly aware that something was wrong. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.